We are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 2nd East Hampton Town Board work session. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez,
Present.
Councilman Lees,
Present.
Councilwoman Overby,
Here.
Councilman Bragman,
Here.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
To the
the
flag,
United States of
United
America,
States of
and
America.
to the republic
Yes.
for which it
Yes,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay.
This morning, we have a public portion where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We also have four topics for a work session discussion. Suffolk County Water Authority water tank and wainscot. We'll have leaf blower legislation discussion, followed by the Montauk Skate Park discussion and the potential one-way for Parsons Place and Springs, followed by liaison reports and resolutions. But before we get started, I want to mark the passing of a local individual who's truly heroic. John Behan passed away late this past week. He was a U.S. Marine who served in Vietnam, lost both legs after being seriously wounded in 1966. And, that did not deter him. He came back, he participated as a member of this country's U.S. wheelchair Olympic team in Peru in 1972 and in Canada in 76. As the captain of the team in 76, he won gold medals in the javelin, medaled in the shot put, the discus, and as a member of the basketball team. In 76, Newsday named him as one of the 46 Americans who best represented our nation in its bicentennial year. He served as East Hampton Town tax assessor and as a state assemblyman, starting in 1978, serving for 16 years before becoming the director of Division of Veteran Affairs in the Pataki administration. I have to say that it was a pleasure and honor to get to know John Behan, a man larger than life, truly iconic and heroic, a man who had a very large, warm handshake. Speaking as a person with a very large hand myself, I was always mystified by the size and warmth of his firm handshake. He's going to be sorely missed, and our condolences go out to his wife, Marilyn, and family, and all the friends on his passing. So I just ask you all just to join me in taking a brief moment of silence before we move on with the meeting. Thank you. We'll now move on to the public portion of the meeting. And Michael, do we have any callers on the line at this time?
Yes, we do. I'll unmute the first caller right now with the last four digits of their phone number is 4592. Unmuting now.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning to all. Good morning, Town Board. My name is Walter Zamora Linveld. I'm a resident and worker of the Montauk community, and I'm just calling in to voice my support for the proposed improvement of the Montauk Skate Park project. I just want to say that, skateboarding and surfing is such an integral part of the East End community. And I think, and that's both young and old, obviously. And I just think that we have such a beautiful opportunity to work on something so positive and so long lasting. A project like this can last for generations, and I think it's such a beautiful thing that we should definitely support. And I think the whole community, is behind it. I'm sure you have other callers that are here with the same purpose, because we're all so excited to hopefully make this happen. And then we have an opportunity to work with great builders, designers who are also looking, forward to hopefully being able to do so. And Yeah, that's the reason for my call, and I hope you guys can jump on board and understand the importance of this project to our community, to our youth. So we really look forward to it.
Great. Thanks so much for taking the time, Walt, to call in and let us know your thoughts on that topic. We'll be discussing it, as you know, later in the work session. We look forward to hearing Lisa's presentation.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Be well. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
No, we do not have any more callers right now.
Okay, well, in that case, let's get right to the work session agenda items, and if we get callers that come in, we'll try to work them in later in the meeting if possible. So the Suffolk County Water Authority is proposing a water tank in Wayne-Scott, adjacent to the airport, to help supply water and water pressure throughout the region. And we've asked that our Planning Director, Joanne Powell, join us today to give an overview as to this proposed project. The Water Authority is in fact an authority and is not subject to our zoning per se. However, we have worked cooperatively with the Water Authority over a number of years, whether it be extending water mains to the contaminated areas of Wayne-Scott, or improving fire hydrants throughout Amgansett. So Joanne, if you'd like to give us an overview as to what the Water Authority is proposing and why, we'd appreciate that.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Are you seeing the aerial photograph?
Yes.
Okay. So the area outlined in blue is where the Suffolk County Water Authority owns a property that's about 31 acres. It's just north of the airport on Town Line Road and just south of the gun club. They're proposing to build a 2 million gallon ground storage tank with a diameter of about 100 and the circular area here is where the storage represents the storage tank. So it's about 130 feet in diameter. It's set back about 250 feet from Town Line Road. The deed restriction on the property requires that all improvements be located in this westerly side of the property. They're proposing a 200-foot scenic easement on the southerly side facing the airport. The overall height of the structure is 40 feet. 10 feet of it is below grade. The walls are another 13.5 feet. And then to the dome, then you have a 5-foot vent on the top, and then it's dome. So it's 30 feet in the center where at the top of the vent. According to the Suffolk County Water Authority, and they've been very cooperative in providing information to us and offering mitigation. The cross highway tank in Amagansett was built on property that is a deed restriction on the height of the tank that required it to be no higher than the crown of the road. But recessing the tank added significantly to the cost of the project. They don't have the same deed restriction on Town Line Road, and they didn't find a justification for recessing it more than 10 feet. And again, they point out that the walls on the edge are 13.5 feet above grade, or 13 feet above grade, and it's only, then you've got the 5-foot vent on the top. So they have provided some mitigation. They're agreeing to submit a buffer plan to the town for the town's approval that would screen it, and that would probably go along the edge of the northerly parcel, northerly property line facing the gun club, and then along the clearing at the edge of Town Line Road. They have the 200-foot scenic easement on the southerly side. So coming up the road, Town Line Road, your views are going to be somewhat restricted because you've got the woods until you're really pretty much in front of the property. They're using a project limiting fencing around the edge of the clearing. There is a large stand of mountain laurel towards just to the east of the proposal. Most of that will be protected by the project limiting fencing. They have worked with the Long Island Pine Barrens Society. They've been to the site to get their input on it. And there's the northern long-eared bat is a species of special concern in this area. So they're looking to finish the clearing before the bat emerges from hibernation in the spring. We reached out to Kim Shaw, the Natural Resources Director, and I consulted with outside hydrologists at the county Water Resources Department regarding the project and its need. And their overall evaluation was that it proposed the storage tank would spread out pumping and be a better way to respond to demand and better for the aquifer. Together, we did develop some additional questions, which we put to them, and the Water Authority responded regarding the disinfection process. After all the debris and construction residues washed out of the tank, the interior will be sprayed with a high concentration solution of chlorine. The tank will be slowly filled with water, and then samples taken and sent to the lab to determine that the chlorine residual and all other parameters comply with the drinking water standards. So there's no chlorinated water will be disposed of on the site. We asked them about PFOAs. They haven't tested the site for that. To the best of their knowledge, there's no historical contamination on the site. The 3 wells on the property show no detections of either of these compounds. The contamination on the airport would be moving as the groundwater flows to the east and away from the site. We asked them about additional service areas, which ties into the need for the project. They responded that they've added another 500 new customers in the Wainscott area, and that this could play a part in eventually serving additional people in Springs at some point in the future. But at this point, it's going to be used as a storage tank to provide additional capacity during peak demand hours. So
the planning board, the planning department, have you any other recommendations other than some screening at this point?
We do not. We consulted with a hydrologist at the county Water Resources Department, and they were comfortable with the project. We do not have any additional ones. And the Suffolk County Water Authority referred the LEAF, which is a long environmental assessment form, to the town. They're not subject to site plan approval, in their opinion, based on meeting the balancing act, the balancing test of Monroe versus Rochester. So they will be performing a secret review, correct? Yes, and they asked for our input on the long environmental assessment form is a secret review, and
the town is an involved agency under that review, listed as involved or interested party, which?
They referred it to us, and they referred it to the town board, who referred it to me. So I'm not sure whether they're considering the town an involved agency or not.
I think we would be an interested agency because we have to be a permit granting agency to be an involved agency.
That hasn't always been the case in the past. I know with PSEG that the secret that they performed for the overhead lines we were listed as an interested party, and it was later, I think, determined, I'll let John weigh in on that, but that we would be eligible for involved agency status.
I should just say that the line, the water line is proposed to go to the north, run pretty much adjacent to the property line, not quite on the property line, up into a point where it connects or is parallel or opposite an access road on the gun club. And then it will run in that road, access road, all the way out to Wainscott Northwest Road. And then it will connect to the water lines on that road.
So, Joanne, this is not adjacent to any residences. The roadway is a very rough dirt track, which kind of the hinterlands, if you will, that border between Southampton and East Hampton. And I just wondered about the screening. Is that to protect the vistas? That rough track is being used by someone? Is that the idea?
Well, along the northerly property line, will be clearing, and this may make the tank more visible to the gun club, people using the gun club. And then we propose.
And the Water Authority was amenable to having the vegetation plan instituted there?
Yes, and then it will essentially be wooded along the road, but the water, it's fairly high, and this may be a little bit above the tree line. I don't know. So we propose that they do some evergreen, maybe white pines around the circular inside of the circular driveway to further buffer it.
Do you have that landscaping plan? Do you have that we could see?
They haven't. They said they will submit one to that, and that will be agreeable. That will be agreeable to the town. They haven't actually submitted one yet.
So they want us to look at it and agree to it?
We recommended it, and they said that they would prepare one.
So they've worked cooperatively with us.
Yes.
I know there's a recent well field off in some other locations where we've asked them, even though they're not required to put up any screening, we've asked them if they would consider that, and they've been very cooperative and actually have instituted plantings at other locations. So it's not something we can require of them. It's just a friendly discussion, and they've been very receptive to date.
So my only question, Joanne, on the project is, I know this is already an approved site where they had their wells, but they're going to continue taking access off of Town Line Road, and for that, are they going to resurface Town Line Road, or are they going to regrade it after in that area?
I had no indication they were doing any road improvements. It's not part of the project description.
I would just want to make sure that any of the construction apparatus that they would bring in wouldn't degrade the road worse. But I understand the need that they're looking for. That's just my major concern on that streets. There's been a lot of habitual dumping in that area, and I just, and also shortcutting in that area too. So.
Well, they're going to need to, continually visit that site with inspection and maintenance personnel and equipment. So I'm sure that they're going to be wanting to keep that roadway in usable condition. That's something we can mention to them as well to consider. Any other questions?
I think we should get these as much documentation as we can to the Wainscott CAC as soon as possible so that they can look this over and comment.
I'm already working with the Wainscott CAC on this. Thanks, Jeff.
Do they have the documents, Sylvia?
They don't have these documents yet. They know that we were talking about it today, and that they could, chime in if they wanted to.
This is our first blush at this, so I think it's important to try to get any further comment and input. So I'm glad that you're already taking care of that, Sophia.
And also, I just mentioned that they're having a virtual, the Water Authority has scheduled a virtual meeting on February the 22nd to get public input on the project.
Joanne, can you forward us the links for that, and we'll get that posted on the website.
Okay.
Yeah. And the description for the project. I don't think I received that in an email.
Did you get the maps, Kathy?
I looked for it from Joanne and it's not coming up in my email.
Okay. So Joanne, if you would make sure that town board members get all of these documents that we're looking at today, that'd be great.
Okay, these are all, they're in the LEAF, the long environmental assessment form, if you have that, but I will forward them all.
Okay, yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Joanne, I'm sorry, just one last question. What was the total height of the structure? And will they need FAA clearance for that too?
It's above ground. Total height is 40 feet, 10 feet is below grade.
Okay.
The height above grade is the 30 feet at the including the 5-foot vents on top of the peak of the dome.
Yeah, it's not going to require any kind of FAA approval. It's well below the tree line.
I just wanted to close the circle on that question about being an involved agency or an interested agency, because I have the definition and know it pretty well. An involved agency means an agency that has jurisdiction by law to fund, approve, or directly undertake an action. So if an agency is going to do that in a discretionary decision, it's an involved agency. So it appears that the town would be an interested agency here because we don't have any direct funding approval or planning on it.
Does that refer to the town's ability to do all of those things, or is it specific to the project, Jeff?
That is a general definition of how the State Environmental Quality Review Act divides up its description of agencies who can participate in the review. That by definition, they say some agencies are interested, some agencies are involved. It doesn't mean that we can't be notified. As we discussed, we have a cooperative relationship with the Water Authority, and we can participate fully. But technically, under the law, we're not an involved agency. But,
John, do you care to opine on this topic? John Jilnicki, are you on the call?
John's muted.
Yeah, one of the things that the Suffolk County Water Authority is trying to think of what the category is though, and they're kind of basically exempt from our local review if it's for infrastructure that's related to their purpose of supplying water to customers. So I think they basically, and they've taken this position, I've talked to them about this, they've taken the position that they come to us for input only kind of out of their interest in being a good member of the community and trying to address any of the town's needs or concerns. But their position, and I think they're right based on what I see under the statutes, that they are not subject to any permitting process or review by us. We certainly can put an input like any other concerned party on their application. But again, interested versus involved, we're not an involved agency, so they don't need to have our approval or input really. I'm just looking for the notation. I had some feedback from Tim Hopkins at the Water Authority about that question. I was just trying to find it if I could.
I have the site right here.
Yeah. So I mean, certainly as an interested party, we can submit our comments, but they don't need any permits or approvals from us to do this kind of work, assuming it's something that's essential to their infrastructure and their primary duty of providing water.
But at this point, I think they've made the justification of need, and there's been a review as to impacts on the aquifer, and actually that came back very positive that this would be helpful to have a tank rather than pumping on demand. to have the reserve tank. So that's good news as far as I'm concerned.
Kind of balances the demand, I guess, over a period of time, spreads it out.
Right. And, one of the things that we've seen in the past, and the Water Authority has directly reached out to us to help emphasize within the community, is that there are certain times of peak demand. And, one of them is that early morning hours of irrigation. We saw the same issue come up in Amagansett. It was causing pressure drops and even potentially impacting fire hydrant pressure due to the widespread use of irrigation all at a particular time. So I know this is one of the reasons why this tank is being proposed, is to balance out that system of public water within the Wainscott area and beyond. Any other questions or comments on this topic before we move on?
No.
Thank you, Joanne. If you could just make sure that the town board gets the documents, that would be great.
Okay, surely.
Okay, I'm going to go to see if there's any callers on the line at this point. We'll take public comment in between topics.
Yes, we have a few callers on the line, Mr. Supervisor. I'll unmute the first one, whose phone numbers end in 0098. I'll unmute that caller now.
Good afternoon, Peter. It's Bob Pine, Springs resident.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I would just like to add my support for any resolution that you can put forth to block noisy lawn equipment on Sundays and holidays. Hopefully you would block it all summer long, but at least Sundays and holidays would be really wonderful.
Thank you for taking the time to call in, Bob.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Be well.
We have another caller on hold, Mr. Supervisor. I'll unmute them right now. Their last four digits of their phone are ending in 8764.
Good morning, it's David Buddha. I had a question for Joanne, or perhaps any other member of the town board that's familiar with that dusty, dirty area of Town Line Road. There is another Suffolk County Water Authority property immediately adjacent to the northwest corner of the subject property, and it seems to have some improvements. I'm just wondering if that is also a well site or a treatment site, and how it relates to this project. It doesn't seem to be directly involved, but the two properties are contiguous and both abut Town Line Road. And I was just wondering what was going on immediately to the northwest of the subject property.
We still have Joanne on the line?
She's up. I don't know if she's muted.
So as I understand it, David, it's the same property that where the existing well field is the same property that is proposed to house the tank. It's a single parcel.
Right. There is a separate tax map lot that is partially contiguous and fronts on Town Line Road immediately to the northwest of where the new tank would go, and there are some kind of improvements or structures there. I was just wondering if that was also part of the well field, or whether they do any treatment of water in the area as well.
You're saying there's a second contiguous parcel? Because I'm looking at the GIS map and there's just one parcel.
No, it's kind of like a triangular, I think. It's just north of the rectangular property, and it's just immediately to the north of that rectangle.
Yeah, I don't think there's any improvements on. I don't believe there are any improvements on that parcel at all, and that is owned by the.
There are.
Water. Well,
there are some kind of improvements, but
according to the satellite view, I'm not seeing any. There's like a little area where you could turn around. That's about it.
Thank you very much, Joanne. So that spot where you're talking about, Peter, that actually is where there's a lot of trash. Individuals burn stuff in there. So that's why I brought that up in the past. Sinead Fitzgibbons and other bikers in the area really want to, we've been I worked with Chief Sarlo in the past about looking at the north side of Wainscott in that area as far as illegal uses. But that's what that area is, and I've been working with land management too. That little circular area.
Excuse me. Can you just move the arrow one more time to the area we're talking about?
Where do you want it to go?
To this,
just above the U and south, just above the U there, right on Town Line Road. That little circular.
She's got her cursor there.
Right on Town Line Road, you'll see there's a little disturbed area. It's just a turnaround.
Yeah.
It's like an area that people used to turn around, and David said that there was, some dumping that had occurred there. I'm not aware of any improvements anywhere on that parcel.
If there was a well on that, would it show up, do you think, on this map?
Yeah, well, there would be clearing around it. They have to clear a certain area around the well field.
I mean, we can have Joanne ask if she wants to, if you think that.
There's a layer on the GIS that gives wells, and it doesn't show one on that property.
Okay, thanks, Joanne.
It may just be a off-road vehicle track there or something, but I think it is also a water authority property, and maybe it needs to be cleaned up. So that's something for David to take a look at.
We've
actually done that several times, David.
Yeah.
We've had crews in there cleaning up that roadway, and we've put up no dumping signage and video surveillance signs, I think, as well. So it's been a chronic problem that both Southampton and East Hampton have dealt with.
I agree, Peter. There's multiple access points into that area.
Did you have any other comments, David?
No, not on this topic. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the morning.
Thank you. You too. Be well. Thanks for calling in. Do we have any other callers on the line, Michael?
Just that first caller, Walter, who called in, is still on hold. I don't know if you want me to see if he has any other comments.
I think he's probably waiting to hear the discussion about the skate park since he was calling in support of that.
Fair enough. Then there are no other callers.
Okay. Thank you. In that case, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item, which is leaf blower legislation. And Councilwoman Overby has been taking the lead on that. And I believe we also have Lauren Steinberg.
Right. So Lauren hopefully is on the line. And I want to thank Lauren for her work on this, and the Energy Sustainability Committee has done a lot of work. So Lauren compiled all of the comments, and you should have had a list of those comments sent about a week ago, maybe a little longer, maybe 10 days ago, in anticipation of this. And so Carol, we need your input as well as we go through this. Do you want to go through these comments one at a time, or how would you like to proceed?
Are you asking me or Lauren?
I'm actually asking the supervisor.
Okay. No, I think it's helpful to go through the comments because, that's the feedback that we got directly about the proposed legislation. And I'll just say right from the onset, I've had a number of people contact me directly saying they don't think the legislation goes quite far enough and that we should be having at least one day a week. This, as you heard Mr. Pine say earlier, where there is no leaf blowers, period. I think that's something we should consider further. But I think it's important to hear what people have to say about it before we go making any decisions.
Sure. So, Lauren, do you want to go ahead? Do you want to read? You put this together, and as I said, I'm very grateful that you were, put this together for us. So, it's your work, and I appreciate it. So, go ahead if you want to just read the first. Let's go through it.
Okay. If at any point you want to stop and talk about a point, just let me know. So we had a public hearing on December 17th, and what I had sent around to the board was a summary of the comments from callers that we received during that public hearing, starting with probably the most recurrent comment that we received from the public, and that is related to what Peter had mentioned. He received from the public that many people are asking that this draft legislation be amended to include that no leaf blowers of any kind, gas, diesel, electric, be permitted to be used by anybody, landscapers, homeowners, on Sundays and holidays. Trying to allow exceptions for homeowners and tenants, they fear will complicate things, as does having any allowance for decibels. And some people even went as far as to ask that the legislation go even further to include no landscaping be allowed on Sundays, and have a shorter period of time, which it would be allowed on Saturdays, for example, 5 hours, and for the rest of the week, only have it be allowed from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or until 1/2 hour before sunset, whichever is earliest, was a suggestion. So basically, people are asking that they get Sunday as a day of peace, where they don't have to listen to, at the very least, leaf blowers, gas and diesel leaf blowers. They also mentioned that they would like to see the scope of the legislation expanded to include a ban on all 2-stroke gas and diesel powered landscaping equipment, such as string trimmers, chainsaws, wood clippers, etc., and that the town be more restrictive on what type of landscaping equipment can be used and when. There was also some suggestions for language changes in Chapter 155, which is the new chapter on landscaping and gardening that's proposed, Section 1, Part A, to change the statement protecting health by reducing emissions to protecting health by eliminating emissions from the use of gas and diesel powered leaf blowers. And in Part A, instead of stating that the landscaping activities may pose a risk of noise, odor, and pollution, state that they do pose a risk of noise, odor, and pollution. And other comments asked that registered landscapers be required to display a decal on their vehicles. And in regulations, in Chapter 155, Section 4, landscapers not be allowed to blow debris into the streets. And that actually is referenced in the draft legislation in Section 4.1a, to not have it be permitted to blow debris into the streets because of the contaminants that are being blown as a result. Another suggestion was to change the start date of the annual gas and diesel leaf blower ban till after Memorial Day. Currently in the draft, it is May 20th to September 20th. And another comment was to have restrictions on the decibel levels for all leaf blowers, including electric. But like I mentioned earlier, there was some reply comments to that would make things too complicated and be difficult for the town to enforce. And if another comment was if it remains in the legislation to allow non-commercial use of leaf blowers on Sundays, that there be an exception added for homeowners that cannot landscape their own properties, for example, disabled or elderly individuals, so that they would be allowed to have a proxy that's permitted to do the work that is not a commercial landscaper. Because currently the draft states that leaf blowers may be used on Sundays if operated by a homeowner and tenant. But if the homeowner or tenant physically cannot, they can allow somebody to do it on their behalf. The Licensing Review Board also had a representative call in to the public hearing, and they made a few comments. They feel that the landscaping license should be independent from the home improvement contractor's license, because unlike construction, landscaping is a property improvement and bodes a different skill set. The LRB also feels that the license should have a lesser educational requirement and be specific to the industry. For example, they would have to provide a class on pesticides or fertilizer, which is included in that draft legislation, that if the landscaper intends to use chemicals or pesticides, they would have to provide proof of a DEC certificate. And if they intend to use fertilizer products, they have to provide a proof of a certificate of completion of a Suffolk County nitrogen fertilizer turf management course. So that actually is already in the draft legislation. The LRB also asked for a set of standards to evaluate landscapers and guidance on how to investigate complaints about landscaping, since they would be different than building construction, significantly more substantive and time relevant. And the LRB also thinks that there should be some threshold of exemption. For example, if a landscaper is over 18 years old and only mows a few lawns and makes less than some financial threshold, an example they gave was $2,000 a year, the landscaper shouldn't be subject to the insurance and education requirements of the license. And finally, LRB suggested that existing landscapers that currently do landscape construction under the current Home Improvement Contractors Code receive a letter as a courtesy, or at least an invitation to comment. And this is what they did when they undertook changes to the Contractors Code in years past. And they did make a point that is because of the change in format that we're all operating in due to COVID. And that is a summary that I have of the comments that were made during that December 17th public hearing.
Board care to discuss any of those items? I mean, I think the one that we heard the most about was to have at least one day of complete ban on use of blowers.
Yeah, so I'll go. I'm not a supporter of that. Primarily, my consideration right now is a lot of us, on this board, we work, our 6-7 days a week at times. I wish, if there was an 8th day, we'd be working on it. So it's challenging enough to find a couple hours to do your own landscaping. I do my own landscaping. I use a scratch rake. I also use a leaf blower. I have a gas and I have an electric leaf blower. But it's already limiting working so hard, raising a family, to be able to be shoehorned into set time frames. So I'm supportive of the commercial aspect of it, because I think that's where so much of the nexus of this issue is right now, where multiple machines on one property going on. But when we're limiting the homeowner right now, it's a little bit more challenging to me. When we start getting into allowing a person that's a gentleman or a lady that are elderly to have landscaper contract, I think that's too ambiguous. I think it would be tough for code to enforce, and still there'd be so many calls in, because why is that person? Is it the tenant that's elderly, or is it the homeowner that's elderly? I know many property owners haven't been to their properties out here in years. They just rent them out. So I'm challenged right now. I've stated this in the past. I would like to continue to try to protect, the resident out here that does their own work by not limiting the times that they can do so, because some of us are just that we just don't have another day, another hour in our lives right now. So that's what's challenging to me for making this even more limiting than from the commercial aspect of it.
So David, would you support the legislation as written?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go forward with this, to see what the public was saying. I think my primary concerns right now is hearing from the LRB. Those are all very valid concerns from the LRB. It makes sense. But as far as letting individuals, also making sure there's I'm sorry, Carol, but more work maybe for the clerk's office, but a tag for that type of contractor, that license. I do support it as is move forward and written right now.
I just meant that one section. Just that one section, David. So you would support it as written, okay?
Yes.
And not got it. And Kathy?
Yeah, and I feel the same way as David. I think I brought this up back in November and December when we were discussing it, back to, working families. Some folks, their only day off is Sunday, and it's a family affair to, mow the lawn and blow the leaves and whatnot. And I just don't think that to have a prohibition on Sunday doesn't work for our working families.
I'll just say to Kathy, I wish it was a family affair in my house. Unfortunately, it comes down on me all the time. It'd be a lot quicker if it was a family affair. You girls listening?
I'll say I've heard just the opposite, that that hardworking people should have a day off where they can sit at home and not listen to the sound of leaf blowers all day long. I think there's folks obviously on both sides of that argument. there's so many intrusions of sound and noise within our everyday lives, and to have a day of quiet, I think would be, supported widely by a number of people, whether they're hardworking people or retired, either way. But that's up to the board, I guess, to discuss and try and parse out a direction to go.
I want to jump in and say I support a ban on Sundays. I think there's a larger quality of life issue here. I think noise is one of the worst irritants we have, and it's one of the most corrosive irritants in terms of our rural character and the peace and quiet here, which is remarkable. I found that out last night when I didn't have power, how quiet it really is out on the East End. So I'd like to see, I'd like to see no leaf blowing on the holidays. Frankly, I think we should shorten the hours on Saturday as well. I think there's a quality of life issue here, and I think we should start toning it down on the weekends. I like the idea about expanding the law to include other devices that use those noisy, polluting two-stroke engines. I forget what they call the machines that whip around a string to do some trimming, but they're pretty noisy too. I think the start date is okay. I like it where it is. It seems like the landscape license issues brought up by the Contract License Review Board are valid, particularly giving a notice out to the community. But on the whole, I think we should try to do a little bit better on quieting down the community. I think we really need it.
Can I just say something about that notice? We could put out a public notice, but I can't take the list of contractors and pull out who is a landscaper at this point. That's not the way they've been licensed. They're all licensed as home improvement contractors. So you'd be sending out 100,000 letters.
Okay.
I mean, we could put our heads together and come up with some of the major contracting companies and, put it out that way. That would be fine. But I can't.
Is that the real number? I mean, how many licensed contractors do we have in the town of East Hampton?
If you're going over the 2-year period, that's probably going to be a close number.
100,000.
Anywhere from 60,000 up. Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
That doesn't sound practical.
That's a major mailing, particularly with the stresses on the post office.
Stresses on the post office is my opportunity to say that I received in my P.O. box yesterday, which is 459, a letter intended for the Choctaw County Treasurer in Fort Benton, Montana. And the only thing that I had in similarity with that address was P.O. Box 459. How it came here from Montana, I have no idea. I returned it this morning.
Wow.
So stresses on the Postal Service, yes.
Yeah. So I would like to also tell the town board, and I think Lauren sent the links to it, that the state is also considering a gas-powered leaf blower ban from May 1st until September 30th. I don't know if that's anything, it's obviously not passed, but is that anything that we would like to consider? Or do we want to wait until we see what happens with the state to adjust anything that we would have? Or so do you want to stay with the May 20th date?
Well, ironically, the dates that they used is how we defined the season for the airport legislation back in 2015.
Really?
Yeah. It lines up perfectly.
All right, so
I mean, where did the dates? I mean, where did May 20th to September 20th come from? Like, why those particular dates?
The Memorial Day rush.
We modeled that off of Southampton's village's already passed legislation on a ban of leaf blowers. That's what the Energy Sustainability Committee recommendation, which kicked all this off, basically copied from with those dates.
We don't know why they picked May 20th to September 20th.
No.
Okay, so I think that the biggest change, I mean, we'll have to
So
come back.
Can I ask just a question? Because we, so as far as ban on Sundays, Jeff has supported a ban on Sundays. Peter alluded to it, but I wasn't sure if you were definitive on that.
I've just had so many people contact me and say, we need one day. And I've heard from people who say that they work 6 days a week and they want it one day where they don't have to be constantly interrupted, harassed, whatever, with the sound of constant leaf blowing in their neighborhoods. So most of these neighborhoods in that category are small lots close together, and you can't escape the sound of leaf blowing. It could be 3 houses down, it could be 3 houses behind, it could be next door, and it's very disruptive. And people, I keep hearing from people that they want a break, they want a day off. So I think it's something we should seriously consider. I think the biggest response to what our proposed legislation was that it didn't go far enough and carve out a day of peace.
See, and I also interpret it as it didn't go far enough in that they didn't just want us to limit gas powered, diesel, they wanted us all leaf blowers and that's what I heard.
You hear some of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard both.
Definitely.
Sylvia, where do you stand on a ban on Sundays?
This is going to sound too political almost. I understand the concern for working families, but I also know that noise is a problem, and it's a problem out here that we've been hearing, for many years, especially with leaf blowers, since I've been on the town board. So I think Jeff just said it was the most corrosive quality to life issue at this moment. So, I would, I'm torn. I know that the Energy Sustainability Committee would say to that they would support banning it altogether on Sundays.
There are other options. I think there have been comparative studies that just a leaf rake works as effectively, or a broom as effectively as a leaf blower. It's much safer. You're not disturbing and blowing up all sorts of debris and dust and fumes. And if you really have to get some of those leaves moved on a Sunday, maybe let's just use the rake. It's also good to exercise.
Yeah. I mean, I did, I think it was one of the comments where somebody called and said their neighbor was using the leaf blower, and and the gentleman that called said he was raking with a leaf rake, and they both finished at about the same time. So, I know that's all anecdotal, but it's certainly, these are things worth considering. So, I don't know where you guys want to land on this. We could split the baby and say every other Sunday, No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
None of that would ever work.
Yeah, right. Enforcement would love that. Like, okay,
No.
Does the day of the week end in an even number or an odd number?
So
I would urge us to make a strong stand for peace and quiet. I think it's the larger issue facing the community.
But there's also a reason not to be so top heavy immediately and try to phase things in appropriately. This is a large change. We've seen it now in the villages. We're coming to the town. The villages, particularly East Hampton Village, have a lot smaller postage stamp lots. But when we come to the town, if we move forward with the legislation we have, we can always add more on if it doesn't do enough. It's going to be very difficult to remove it.
that was the conversation that we had in our small group of the energy sustainability, was that, we could add on as, to see if this is effective or not. So start a little bit, as I think David is alluding to, start a little bit smaller. And then, if we still have the complaints that we have, then, we can make it a stronger statement later on.
So would we be talking about just Sundays between May 20th and September 20th to begin with, in terms of no leaf blowing?
Well, we're talking about the gas and diesel powered, yes.
Right. But just a prohibition during those months for Sundays.
Yes.
Well, I would be willing to go to public hearing on a prohibition on leaf blowers, all leaf blowers, on Sundays and holidays between May 20th and September 20th. And let's hear from, but we have to make sure that short of sending, letters to 60,000 plus contractors. I mean, we have to make every effort to try to reach out to the community so that we can get,
So that's roughly.
We can publicize the public hearing and all of us really work our CACs and try to get feedback on this. But I'd be willing to go to public hearing on a prohibition on Sundays of all leaf blowers.
What we're talking about is
May 20th to September 20th.
Which is 16 or 17, days out of the 52 Sundays in the year.
I'm always willing to go to public hearing to hear what people say. As we noticed, even with, the HCA recently, I want to listen and get an educated voice in there. But I'm just telling you my honest opinion where I'm starting to land. But going to the public hearing is what we're supposed to do, and I would listen.
Okay, so in the next, there were two on chapter 155, two small changes about protecting health by reducing emissions and saying eliminating emissions, and then that they may pose a risk to do pose a risk. I think there's enough evidence out there that I would substitute the word do for may, and I would also substitute eliminate for also eliminating emissions. I'd substitute that.
I support that.
I think it's stronger language, and it's time for stronger language.
So is there support? I've heard, to stay with the date of May 20th. Is that still the board's wish?
The weather gets nice a little bit earlier than that some years, and people want to spend more time outside. But I understand there's also a lot of preparation that takes place before Memorial Day weekend. So I think that was the justification for May 20th.
Okay, so we're going to stay with the date May 20th.
That's a board decision. I'm okay with leaving it that way for now.
I'm okay with leaving it.
I'm fine with that for now.
Okay. There was a comment about including restrictions on the decibel level for all leaf blowers, including electric leaf blowers. Do we want to step into that right now, or just not talk about?
I think it's really difficult to monitor, and inform and comply, and I think it would be taking on a great deal that would be very difficult to enforce and communicate.
Okay. So then I think, then the next big questions are all LRB related. And that's something that John, I think you and Carol and I and Lauren should look at to see, because now we're going to involve probably changing the duties of the LRB. You agree with that, John? I don't know if you're on mute.
John's muted.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to Carol about that and see how it all plays out, because it, originally we had a separate enforcement provision in this code, but then we decided to keep it under the License Review Board, under the Contractors reg. So we can discuss that as to what works better.
Okay.
As Carol mentioned, I don't know how we don't have the information really to just take them out and know who's doing the landscaping and who's not under the licensed contractors.
Well, we will in the future if we pass this and we go to license them, even if they still have to get a home improvement contractor's license, but I'll give them something separate.
Right. At that point,
defines them as a landscaper and also keep track of them from that point on.
Right.
All right. So I think if we can tweak that so that and work with the LRB and see, if this satisfies what they need as well.
I think changing the educational requirements to be more specific to, the landscaping maintenance is appropriate, and to have a separate category for that.
Okay.
I mean,
and most of them do right now. That is what either that or OSHA, which is still just as important for some of them, but most of them do have that schooling.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully we'll have another draft of this legislation as soon as we can. The landscaping folks want to know, they want this looked at sooner rather than later and not try to run into the season. So we'd like to keep moving this along.
Yeah, there's a financial impact out there to a lot on this too.
So we look forward to those revisions and a further discussion at a future town board meeting. And as soon as it's ready to be discussed, we'll get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I don't know if we could have it ready by next week, John. Carol, what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
All right, so we'll try to get this turned around for the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, moving on. We are now up to a topic which is near and dear to my heart. And I know, David Lease, you've taken this one by the rails, let's say, and dropped in to put this together. Montauk Skate Park.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you. Exactly. Well, it's very interesting history on here. When you start going through the history of a park, I've seen your name on multiple, resolutions, Peter, Councilwoman Julia Prince, and also the former Councilman Len Bernard also. So I'm going to bring in John Britton, who's also part of a community advocacy group. We can bring him into the conversation here. And I'm going to go through a slide deck, primarily just to show a little bit of the history of the skate park itself, the area that's in Montauk, and also some potential expansions that we can do and the reasons for doing so. So welcome, John. And let me just, I'm going to share my screen with everyone, and I will move forward. Okay, I want to thank everyone. We have a discussion today about the Montauk Skate Park, a renovation and a potential expansion. The Montauk Skate Park is also known as the Lars Simonson Skate Park. It was dedicated in his memory almost 10 years ago now to a date, who was a former Montauk resident that unfortunately passed away, but his love of skateboarding made him use the park, I guess, on a daily basis. I wanted to give everyone a little bit of history about this, about the Lions Field amenities and where this is sited. The skate park actually is sited within the old New York State right-of-way out of Montauk, and it actually ends up being a pretty good combination of recreational facilities. As we can tell here, the skate park is located in the bottom right-hand corner here. There's a basketball court. We actually have a stretch of the Palmanock Path there. We have the Lions Field baseball and softball fields. We do have a comfort station, a playground, and the fields were dedicated to Hank Zabrowski Fields and Grounds in 1999. If we take this a little bit further, we get to move a little bit further south. You'll see the ball fields up here, in which is the old soccer fields, or I believe I'll call them the rugby fields, because I think that's where Montauk Rugby started playing. We also have a fishing station down here, and a little bit in the lower left-hand corner, there's 2 tennis courts that the town board a couple of years back, before Jeff and I came on. I think most of the town board members are here, voted to recently update those tennis courts and add some pickleball lines on. So there's a lot of recreational activities and opportunities in this area of Montauk, and the town has done very well over the last 20 years as far as continually try to increase it and maintain these facilities. Recently, last year, we put on new LED lights, and this time it might be time now to upgrade or expand the skate park. I want to give you a little history about the skate park. It is definitely a much beloved resource. The current park was designed by a skateboard legend named Andy Kessler in 1999. He was a pioneer in skateboarding and skate park design that used to ride the rails and such with the likes of Tony Alva and Tony Hawk. And actually, recently he had a skate park named after him in the Upper West Side. He unfortunately died of a bee sting. There's a large contingent of Montauk that really enjoyed Andy. I guess he had a very gentle hand and just was a really nice person. Former town councilman Len Bernard and Pete Hammerly spearheaded this project in 1999. Initially, the town bonded $170,000 for the project. And then minor projects in 2011 were spearheaded by Julia Prince, and then also by our town supervisor, Peter, more recently, just to do more small minor upgrades to the park. I know I've been discussing this recently because there's been a lot of outreach over the last year. The park is seeing consistent use over the years. There's a great population of local skateboarders, greater than ever right now, and the ages are great. Ages and all the faces are new. Girls, boys, everyone of different social economic status. During COVID pandemic, the park was heavily used because everyone was looking for an outdoor recreational aspect. And this is one that was right there in Montauk. When we discussed this in December, Peter, the supervisor, asked me to convene an advocacy group, to start learning about skateboarding. We brought in individuals on this list here, some names, John Britton, Tim Garneau, Chris Coleman. We all have children. We all have adult, boys and girls. And there's a palpable interest in this park the more and more that I visit it. It's great to see. I'm going to pass this on right now a little bit to John Britton. Maybe, John, if you go through the next couple slides for me, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. My name is John Britton. I'm a homeowner in Ditch Plains, have been for 16 years. I'm also a parent. I've got an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they both like to skate, and they both like that skateboard, and they both like to surf. And their community of friends, as David said, is very interested in those activities too. So just echoing a little bit of what David said, this is a very beloved resource in Montauk. If the surf is no good, you're going to usually find these kids at the Montauk Skate Park. So it is treasured, but it is also somewhat degraded at this point. You could tell from some of those photos, it is not in the best shape that relative to what it was like in 1999. It's really best for intermediate and expert skaters. I've talked to many people in the community who've given up skateboarding because they feel like it's a little either too treacherous, the conditions are treacherous, or the surface conditions of the concrete are not up to the safety standards they'd like to see. So it's a great resource and it's cherished, but it could be so much better relative to serving the needs of the broader community. So we'd like to see something that is more amenable for the entirety, to bring in something that's good for beginners and for people of all ages. So we have informally begun this process of reaching out. It's been an incredibly positive amount of feedback that's come out of the support, come out of the town and come out of the community. I've personally had about 70 conversations with different families, parents, skaters, surfers, members of the governance structure, even the state structure. The support for this has been universal, and there's been quite a bit of support among the community for financial commitment as well. I mean, it is a top of mind priority, in part because there are just not that many year-round activities, recreational activity options in Montauk for these families and for these kids. And this is just something that really is in a sweet spot in terms of what people want to prioritize for how their kids, how their families, how the whole community wants to recreate. If you look at what skateboarding has done, David, if you want to click forward one more slide, skateboarding has really changed a lot in the last 20 years. It's not the same sport it was 20 years ago when it was a little bit more of a rebellious kind of, had a bad boy image. This is now the primary and central preference for recreation among a lot of families and a lot of kids. And you've seen this tremendously in Montauk in particular, as surfing has changed and become really central to the cultural identity of Montauk. I'm sure you're all aware of this, but now Montauk is considered one of the premier surf destination towns in all of the East Coast of the United States. It's become quite a thing for Montauk, and skateboarding is the first cousin to surfing. So when you have this big community of people who like skateboarding, who like surfing, if the surf is no good, a lot of them are going to be skateboarding. And so that evolution has really meant that there is more and more demand for this resource. And, when, like I said earlier, this is really a park that is best for intermediates to experts. It's not that welcoming for little kids who are just starting off, and it could be so much better and so much more approachable for the entire community. So we have put together something where we've got this advocacy group, and we have done quite a bit of learning in the last couple of months. There is a very clear, logical way to make improvements. The most logical plan is to expand with concrete construction on the adjacent former basketball court. You can see it in the upper image on that slide. This was cleared off 10 years ago for the skating community. It's just been sitting there empty for 10 years. It's a great resource. It's wide open. It's available. And that would be the logical place for pouring new concrete and adding features. Even if we don't touch the existing park, this addition to this area is a very easy way to expand the accessibility and really dramatically improve the overall utility of the park and make it accessible for beginners. And again, this could be something that is used. This is one of the few things that is a low cost, wide open to all users in the town, all potential town members. It's just one of those things that could be used year round, and there are not that many recreation opportunities that would be available year round that would be basically just the cost of a skateboard, and you can do it for hours in there. It's something that would be a very logical thing to put on that vacated basketball court. So the leadership group has reached out to a number of top-notch designers. We've talked to 10 of them. 4 of them have come back to us and have submitted plans, renderings, schematics that we can look at. That's exceptional because most of the times, those designers charge money up to upwards of $5,000 to produce these types of drawings. The reason they're doing this is their excitement level is so high, in part to work on something that is affiliated with Andy Kessler, and in part because they have a good awareness of Montauk, and they want to be the designer that is attached to building something great in Montauk. This is something that these designers and these builders are really chomping at the bit to get as an RFP. They want this work. And it's just further reflection of how much skateboarding has evolved and how central Montauk is to this type of activity. So we're in great shape. We've got 4 as of today, as of last night, we got a 4th in. So we now have 4 top-notch designers, the people who build the best parks anywhere in the world, have submitted plans for us to review. They are willing to do the work. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to select one of them and begin the process of working with the town's engineering, and in concert with that, come up with plans that are definitive and then move from there into selecting a builder. So where we are now at the end of this is we are envisioning a public-private partnership. We can build an outstanding facility depending on what we can raise. I know personally from just the feedback that we're getting from the community that the interest is real enough that we're going to be able to raise some good money from the town, from the people in the town, from the entire people. There are going to be people even from the broader East End and even New York City who are going to contribute to this. It's got that kind of backing, but we need leadership also from the town in order to build the best facility possible. The facility will last more than 20 years. Obviously, this park is still very much in service 20 years later. This is going to be something that literally thousands of kids and adults are going to be able to enjoy year round. And it's going to be a tremendous asset for Montauk that complements the growth in Montauk's cultural identity as a surfing hub. This will be one other companion piece that will really be a tremendous asset for the community. So we're very excited. The advocacy group is very excited. All of these families that I've spoken with are, very strongly desiring to have something built for their families and for the community. And I just want to thank you all in advance for considering this, and hopefully we can build something great in Montauk.
Thank you very much, John. And as I just move forward, as the board knows, one of my presentations, I always like to look at the global look at the park here. As we see the skate park in the middle here, it corresponds with a parking lot, a basketball court. The Palm Knock Path is in this area, approximately coming through here. But we also have an area where there's connectivity to the lower ball fields and the bathrooms by a stairwell. I never knew it was there until about 2 years ago when Tim Garneau and I walked through there. We had it cleared out, but we would like to make sure that this stairwell and the one parent might have a child that wants to go skating, but might have another child that wants to be on the swing set. One child might need to go to the bathroom. So the connectivity is a big thing, and we would like to try to maybe add some solar lights in there. We are also looking at this as a potential plan, and I mentioned this all to the Montauk CAC last night with great enthusiasm. This is the skate park. We would look into potentially expanding into these areas within the purple. We're looking maybe in some added parking spaces in there because it is a well-used park. We would look for maybe a new shade pavilion in this location up here, and maybe a fitness equipment station in here. Solar lights that will go down that add for the connectivity. And then as I was talking we were up there as a meeting, and there was actually Asa Gosman and his family wanted to go sledding. Well, they couldn't go sledding there because the sledding hill over here takes you into the back of the batting cage. So I've been told in the past that this hill in the past was all cleared. So there's many members in the community that would like to see a small part of a sledding hill maybe restored in this location. So again, this is it's like almost an a la carte. We wanted to look at the whole entire process out here. And much of this stuff could be done in phases also. The next steps we would look at potentially, if the board likes this, we would request an engineering proposal from McLean for design and project support and approve said proposal if desired. We would finalize design aspects and gain support from the skateboarding user community for those designs. Again, we want to make the design opening and inviting to beginners, younger children, the next generation, but also fun for the experienced skateboarders and riders. We would confirm with New York State, the states, through Tom Dess for any potential changes because it is their property. We've already had those conversations and requests. We would finalize the budget and fundraising aspect. Again, as John mentioned, there's a community advocacy group that is actively fundraising. If anyone's interested, please contact John Britton or others that are on the committee. We would then potentially go to an RFP for construction of the skate park expansion, other elements based on the final budget, select a builder and commence construction. And then again, maybe phase in all other aspects of part of that global design as we move forward. So overall, there's been real palpable desire from the community. I think we've gotten a lot of emails. This started about a year ago. Some interested people in Montauk reached out to myself. I know I brought it up with Sylvia at the time. There was other Montauk. Peter's been to this project and others on the board. So it is something that is extremely doable right now. I think what John mentioned is that public-private partnership. The private aspect of it, the citizens are really stepping up with their aspect that they want to fundraise on their advocacy group to get this project done and make it a great project. I think that is something that's a great driving force here. So that's our presentation. I know we've talked about it a little bit more in the future steps, and I wanted to see what the board's thoughts are on this. And if going forward we come up with a little bit better of a budget plan on there, that if we do have to add something to the capital budget, we can do so. But also try to move forward with this expansion and upgrade at the park. And John and I are here for questions.
Well, David, thank you for that presentation. Kathy, you have comments?
Well, I was just going to say that we've received dozens of emails from folks in Montauk and sharing very personal emails, sharing their connection to the park, their connection to Andy Kessler, and the enthusiasm for the project is really infectious. I mean, it's a perfect model, right, for public private partnerships, and I'm completely on board, and I appreciate all the work, David, that you've done and John has done to move this forward.
I support it. I think it's a great idea. It's reminding me that when I grew up, I skateboarded a lot, and I'm wondering if we get that beginner stuff, if I could take a shot at it. But I probably would have to wear some. Do they wear elbow protectors and knee protectors?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, beginners do for sure.
Okay. Well, I know my son has tried to persuade me. He uses a skateboard that has one wheel in the front, one in the back, and is hinged in the middle. And he actually said, just try it. It's much easier than the other kind of skateboard, which I did not do. Anyway, I'm enthusiastic about it. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to take a try at that beginner park if and when we get it.
We'll make sure to let us know so we can do the photo shoot.
Yeah, I'll video that.
I would want an EMT guy there.
Yeah. Make sure your insurance is paid up.
It is very close to the the Montauk Fire Department.
So yeah, I'm in full support. And David, I just want to thank you again for pulling all of this together and doing it quickly and bringing the community and the town of East Hampton together for a project like this. So would love to see it and hope that the money can be raised so that we can get it completed.
Thank you.
I just want to add that, I was the liaison to Parks and Rec for a while earlier on. And, we'd had conversations about making improvements to the skate park over time. And, while there were some in the community who, wanted to see those changes, and I think we agreed that the park was really tailored and designed for more expert users, that element of beginner intermediate was missing. There really wasn't quite the same kind of response that we're seeing now. And I have to say, if there's a silver lining in this pandemic, it's that people have really been hungry for safe outdoor activities. And we've had a much more consistent population throughout the year due to the number of people who have, become full-time residents here in the community. And, it really is an idea whose time has finally come and coalesced. And I'm really excited about where we are right now, both the input from the community members contacting us, explaining the need, seeing the support both in voices and in finances. It's very encouraging, and I really look forward to getting this project on track, lined up, and drop in, if you will, on it. Both my children skateboarded early on. My son particularly was very enthusiastic skateboarder, and we sent him away to Woodward to skateboard camp. I think his first overnight sleepaway camp was at 7 years old. Both of them are surfers. So I understand the importance and the interest in the community, particularly in Montauk. So let's work together and figure out how we can get this done.
Well, everyone, I thank you very much for the humble support. As you all know, I'm not a skateboarder, but I love recreation. I got hip replacements. So Jeff, Careful, right? As we go here.
Could be a skateboarder. You could take Councilman Bragman's lead, and we could all get out there on that course when it's done. I think.
It's great. The learning more about Andy Kessler and his influence in the skateboarding community, it really makes it a treasured aspect. And it was state of the art 20 years ago, but there's so many new things I'm learning at, and John's helping and assisted. So with this, John, let's keep moving forward to your advocacy group. God bless them. I thank you very much for doing that. And board, I look forward to bringing more information back to you very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you all again for considering. And I'm happy to share you can reach out to me at any time. Happy to share contact information. You can get me through David. I'm happy to discuss any aspect of this as we move forward.
John, thanks for your help. And David, I want to thank you again for all of your work, outreach to the community and moving this forward to where we are today. So appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll move on to our last agenda item for today, which is potential one-way for Parsons Place and Springs. And Kathy, I know you've had some conversations, I guess, initially with the Heart of Springs folks about concerns in this location to two-way traffic. It is situated right between Ashwell Hall, the blacksmith shop, and the library. It's the site of the Fisherman's Fair. It does get closed down for the Fisherman's Fair, but I know there's been some discussion about creating a one-way street at Parsons, and the diagram you have here shows it one way from east to west.
Right. So as Peter said, the request came from a subcommittee of the Heart of Springs, and that's the Springs Library, Ashwell Hall, and the Springs Presbyterian Church. And, we know when there's events at Ashwell Hall, or as Peter said, the fair, or every Saturday with the farmers market, it's people are parking haphazardly. It's challenging crossing the street. And folks felt that, making this a one way would improve safety, but also create more parking for events that go on right there in the Heart of Springs. So I discussed this with Chief Sarlo about, which way would the one way go. It was agreed that east to west made the most sense because of line of sight issues at the intersection of Parsons Place with Springs Fireplace Road and with Old Stone Highway, where it says ramp there. There's not great visibility up there. So I went back and checked with Steve Lynch, and he drove the area. He agreed with the chief, east to west. And I've been playing phone tag with Paul Hamilton, who's the manager of the farmers market, because I wanted to just touch base with him before today, but we keep missing each other. So, the hope is to have this in place before the start of the season. If the board is supportive, I would ask the town attorney's office to draft legislation. We could notice it for public, bring it back to the work session, notice it for a public hearing, potentially on February 18th, and hear it on March 4th, because, it'd be really nice to get this in place, before May 1st, so that folks get used to a one-way there.
Board members have any comments?
I'm supportive of listening to the, to going to public hearing. I'd like to see what folks have to say.
Yeah, and I think, Kathy, when you brought this up before, initially we maybe were looking in the other direction. And just as a parent at Spring School, how you queue out of Spring School, you make a right, some people make a left, then a left on the Parsons. I think this is, if it's a one-way street, this is the best direction for a one-way street. I think you're going to hear from parents no matter what right now. Some parents, instead of going down School Street, they'll come up Parsons Place. But again, I think there's a greater good here, and we'll look forward to seeing what people have to say.
Yeah, and this has the support, which I was going to bring up in my liaison report, but I should bring it up now. This, we discussed this at the January Spring CAC, and it had unanimous support of the CAC, and there were probably about 21 members on the call at the time.
So
that also includes parents too.
That's pretty significant if you can get the Spring CAC to be unanimous about or any CAC to be unanimous about something. I think that says something about the proposal. I would just say, we've looked at trying to create more parking in this area on Parsons Place because of the need. And I wonder if, we've also made an effort to correct and improve intersections where there are those triangles because they're confusing. We've done that at Hands Creek, and Cedar Street, which are problematic. We're looking to do something at Springs Fireplace and 3 Mile at some point for the county, improving that intersection. The intersection of, I believe it's Accabonac and Floyd and Town Line and Accabonac. Clearly, we have a similar situation here at Old Stone and Springs Fireplace, where you see that little reference of the ramp there. That intersection could be made a right angle intersection and improve the line of sights there. I wonder if any consideration had been given to closing off Parsons Place from Old Stone completely and making that a two-way street coming into a dead end, basically into a parking area, instead of having it be a through street at all. I think that alleviates a lot of the safety concerns about vehicles traveling at maybe a higher rate of speed. One of the concerns I have about having just a one-way street there going east to west is that, and we've seen this elsewhere, we don't have very many one-way streets in town.
Right.
It's not a typical traffic pattern by any means. And some of the ones that we do have and have had for some time, like Floyd Street, people just go the wrong way. To be able to have that properly marked, you'd have to have some significant signage. I also worry about people who are just trying to take the shortcut into Asheville Hall or coming up north on Springs Fireplace. Parking lot's right there. It's only 50 to 100 feet. They need to pull in real quick and jump into space. I think that's what people will do, given what I've seen elsewhere. So those would be my concerns, and maybe some consideration given to improving the Old Stone intersection and just closing off the street altogether to Old Stone. Something to consider.
I don't know what to say to that. So are you suggesting we hold off on this and we look at making Parsons Place a dead end? I don't have another.
That would be, that's basically the recommendation. I'm just putting it out there. I think, before making a change that would affect so many, that we should really just kick it around and fully explore what the options are. I think that would be an option to consider. Again,
I'd like to see it.
I think anytime you have a triangular intersection like you see in the north part of that, it's problematic. People trying to make the left across traffic that might be coming southbound on the Fireplace Road, at a relatively high rate of speed, turning onto Old Stone, and somebody's trying to turn, left across that traffic in order to make a left going south on Springs Fireplace. We've seen those type of intersections. We know how they evolve, ox carts and wagons back to our agrarian past, but some of these intersections really are somewhat dangerous, and we've been improving them throughout town. So it's something to consider. It may seem like to some as being maybe an extreme or oddball idea, but I think it's worth considering, as it would accomplish the calming of traffic on Parsons, and it would increase the parking.
Maybe we could run that by the chief and the highway super as well.
And if there are good reasons for not doing it that way,
Yeah, I guess what I'll do is when we get done here, I'll reach out to Barnaby, ask him to, create a map because, picture's worth 1,000 words. And I will, reach out to the chief and Steve Lynch and.
Yeah, I apologize for putting this idea out here with such short notice, but I looked at the map when I received it last night, got to looking at it, and I thought, well, hey, wait a minute, what if? So it's, I don't mean to blindside you with that idea because it's kind of out of the blue, but I thought I'd put it on the table for consideration.
Sure. Okay. I can do that.
So I think the issue, Kathy, would be how it would improve parking, whether it's a one-way or a dead end. I'm not sure I see that a dead end would improve the parking, but maybe. And maybe you'd get one or two more spaces. But anyway, that would be a consideration for me.
Yeah, no, I'll have Barnaby try to lay this out with the number of parking spots we get as a one-way versus what we would happen if it was, because you'd have to have some kind of, turn at the end, and you would be giving up parking to do that. And and I'll speak to, Ed Michaels, because I've been in communication with him as he's the president of the Springs Improvement Society.
I mean, you don't really need both those roads at that point. You really just need one or the other. Old Stone Highway or Parsons. And I mean, you could even look at it that Old Stone ends up on Parsons and is two-way there. And then the Old Stone section from Parsons to Springs Fireplace is abandoned for parking.
Well, see, the concern though, and it's something that David brought up, and it's the reason why we're recommending east to west, is a lot of school parents use Parsons Place. If Parsons Place becomes a dead end and it doesn't connect to Old Stone Highway, you're sending parents up to the ramp to make that left. And then what you're doing is you're backing up the ramp where folks are coming down.
I'm talking about reconfiguring that intersection.
That intersection where it says ramp, just that little triangle, has a tree and a telephone pole on it. So it's not like we could, pave it and, we could integrate it. I mean, it would be moving a telephone pole in order to facilitate that. So that's in my mind, that's not a short-term fix.
So what happens at the Springs school during certain hours is if you're coming out of the school, and I don't see this changing, when you come out on the school street, you can't make a left. So anyone that has to go south of, let's say, Parsons Place or south of there, back home or to work after dropping off your kid, can't make a left. So everyone makes a right heading north on School Street to Springs General Store. And then what you see is a lot of people actually then come down Parsons Place and make a left. A lot of individuals actually park with their kids over at the blacksmith shop, and they actually walk over the Pussy Pond Bridge to school. So there's a pretty developed traffic pattern in that area. we all work with each other either in the morning or also in the afternoon, and a lot of that's based on the no left-hand turn restrictions coming out of school. That's just what we say.
Go ahead, David.
No, that's it.
So I mean, Parsons, you're saying is the preferred, for school dismissal, which is what 40 minutes a day, maybe. In the afternoon.
Well, morning and in the afternoon.
So, and that's generally not the times that things are happening at Axwell Hall. But it's a right angle intersection. If that's the preferred way, I mean, you could do it conversely and just block off the section of Old Stone between Fireplace and Parsons. And that could be parking. I mean, you don't really need both roads, is my point. And so if you're considering expanding parking and circulation and safety, I just think a really comprehensive approach of all the possible alternatives would be warranted. There's two other ideas that I don't know if have even been considered.
So to me, those are, reconfiguring that is a longer term project, whereas making this a one-way right now, east to west for this upcoming season when, we know the farmer's market's going to be back. Probably not a lot, any big groups happening at Ashwell Hall. I mean, it's something that can be done immediately to create more parking, to make it safer. And if we want to take a longer look at this for the whole area and deal with what's happening in that little triangle up by the ramp, that's not a quick fix. That's a little bit further down.
I don't know that it's a quick fix or not, because I don't think it's been brought to the highway superintendent. So why don't we just reach out and just float those ideas, see what.
Sure, happy to. I'm happy to. I've spoken to Steve quite a bit about this, so I'm happy to have further conversation.
Okay, I thank you for bringing this to us, Kathy, and we look forward to just that follow up. Maybe that those ideas just they sink like a stone. I don't know. But I think it's worth putting them out there and having a broad discussion about it. And I'm fine if they go down in flames, so be it.
Okay.
And I appreciate your taking all the time that you spent with the CAC and the Heart of Springs folks to try to improve the parking there, because I think we all agree on that there are parking issues, that there are circulation issues. So again, sorry I hope you don't feel like I blindsided you with that, but it just occurred to me late last night when I was catching up on emails and saw that you had sent that map, and seeing the visualization of it triggered some other possible thoughts. So.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we're up to liaison reports. Do we have any, before we go to that, do we have any other callers on the line, Michael? Michael, do we have any callers on the line?
Supervisor, no, we do not have any callers. I just want to let you know that the phone lines are open as I'm talking on it now.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to liaison reports. Kathy, do you have a liaison?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to give an update. Human Services had the foresight, realizing that there was a storm predicted for yesterday, delivered all their frozen meals to the Montauk residents on Friday because just in case they wouldn't be able to get out on Monday. And that was very fortuitous of them, given that town hall was closed yesterday. I just also wanted to remind folks that there are a limited number of scholarships available for free COVID-19 testing. They just need to call Human Services at 631-329-6939. They have a short intake form to see if you qualify for a rapid response test over at Town Hall, at the pod that's just behind Town Hall. Last Wednesday, OLA organized a meeting to discuss their concerns about underage drug use and vaping among students. And on the Zoom call were Minerva and her staff, as well as a couple of parents that are working on a new initiative they have called Project Hope. 5 officers from the East Hampton Town Police Department, Sergeant Ken Alversa, our school resource officer, Police Officer Devin Toya from DARE program, Lieutenant Greg Schaefer, Detective Sergeant Dan Toya, and Sergeant Chelsea Tierney. We also had representation from 4 school districts, Jack Perna from Montauk, Seth Turner from Amagansett, Deborah Winters from Springs, and Adam Fine from East Hampton High School, or East Hampton School District. Sergeant Alversa gave his parent presentation on all kinds of topics, from underage drinking, those electronic smoking devices, what the Good Samaritan law was and whatnot. And the presentation was, when you see it, it's eye-opening as a parent, and it was very well received. So our next steps are going to be, Sergeant Alversa will be doing Narcan training in Spanish for, and OLA will put together groups of community members who wish to be trained in Narcan. But they're going to be doing parent workshops in Spanish, and we're going to be developing content for the the schools to be able to send out to their parents on their parent Google groups. And we'll be able to do that in English and Spanish as a way to, talk to our parents about, what they should be looking for as far as if they're, think that their kids may be, juuling, vaping, and whatnot. So we also learned that OLA's got these two terrific initiatives that they're working on. One is called Project Hope, which is a FEMA-funded initiative for crisis counseling. They've trained 2 teams of 8 crisis counselors in English, and then it's a bilingual group. 85% of their counselors are bilingual, and they're there to provide emotional support and make referrals. So OLA has their own Project Hope helpline. It's free, anonymous, confidential. The number is 631-500-0837. And OLA, Minerva has asked that we, put that out on the town's social media. They're also conducting a mental health survey among young adults and adolescents, and it's really the first regional study of its kind. They're trying to get information about mental health accessibility. So there was, Minerva has got so many things going on, and there's such great projects that I invited her to come to a town board work session where she could go into much more detail about, how they're serving the community, and she was excited to do that. So I'll work with Ann Bell to get her on the agenda, hopefully this month. Spring CAC had a meeting last week, our first meeting of 2021. We had nominations for officers. Lauren Bolger will stay on as chair, Patrice Dalton is vice chair, and Talia Olea will be secretary. There was a discussion of the Springs Park. We had started it in November, and then we didn't have a meeting in December because it was so close to the holidays, and had the further conversation at our January meeting. And, we had actually a record number of people sign on for our spring CAC. We had 94, not quite as many as Wayne Scott CAC meetings, but, we had a number of folks that are daily users of the Springs Park join us. What I, spoke about was that, the Springs Park is a treasure. It's the most popular park in town. We talked about the management plan that was adopted back in December 2009, and that as the park evolved, the primary use became an area for dogs and their owners to roam in a protected and fenced environment, and that it's a park, particularly during COVID, where community members can socialize or find solitude. But I explained that what spurred the discussion at the November meeting and now the January meeting of the Spring CAC was the concern that the folks in land acquisition and management brought to the board back in November about safety. And so we just talked that, these safety issues arise from the fact that the property is overrun by autumn olives, and it's difficult for owners to keep their eyes on their dog and clean up after them. The management plan, in their park rules state that you need to keep Springs Park clean and you need to watch and control your dog. But due to these highly invasive autumn olives, that's become a major issue. So and we didn't have that issue back when we acquired the property because there were, many more grasslands there. So what the management plan and I actually read from the management plan, what it stated was that the way we were going to deal with those autumn olives was with the help of volunteers who utilized the park. A massive removal plan would begin in the fall of 2009 and rid the park of this blight, which was, and they're referencing the autumn olives. With the help of these volunteers, this will be an ongoing stewardship responsibility as the invasives are an ongoing threat. And what Scott Wilson shared with me is that, in the beginning, the land management with volunteers, did start removing the invasives, but they just couldn't keep up with it. it was just, they're really, overgrown. And couple that with the fact that there are more new dog owners in town. During COVID, folks are here, they've adopted, pets. Even our family thought about getting a second dog from ARF. So there are, a lot more new dog owners to the park that maybe, don't have a full understanding of all the rules there as far as keeping an eye on your dog and cleaning up after your dog. So what I proposed was forming a Springs Park Committee, where the committee could make recommendations to address the safety issues, whether that's improving and or increasing signage at the park, or recommendations for scaling back on the autumn olives. That was well received. A number of folks, I had put my email address in the chat, and a number of folks have reached out to me that wish to participate on the committee. And what I was going to do is offer a resolution, probably at the second meeting, the February 18th, establishing the Springs Park Committee and appointing members. So that's where that stands. The other topics that we discussed at the CAC actually ended with us adopting unanimously 4 resolutions. So, and like I said, there was about 21 members on the call. So the Spring CAC unanimously approved a resolution asking the town to buy the property known as 76 School Street with CPF funds to be used as a community park for everyone to enjoy. That property is on the corner of School Street and Old Stone Highway and overlooks Pussy's Pond. The other resolution, second resolution was the CAC unanimously approved a resolution asking the town to approve making Parsons Lane a one-way street. Then we had a discussion about playgrounds. This school is going to be doing a improvement to their playgrounds over there. We talked about, how families can't use the playgrounds, during school hours, Monday through Friday, just weekends. And some of that equipment is for, kids kindergarten and up. Whereas we have a small playground at Maidstone Park, it would be great if that could be expanded a bit. So the Spring CAC unanimously approved a resolution asking the town to improve the playground at Maidstone Park by providing a rubber mat for the equipment area and installing several swings, some specifically for toddlers, bucket swings. Some other folks, after the meeting and this, there was some other discussion that maybe it goes beyond a few swings. So
I've had an outreach from a couple of your members on that, and I'll help you, Kathy, with that, because we've been in contact with a couple, recently a couple designers of playgrounds and safety issues, and I have some catalogs I can send to you also.
That'd be great, because obviously the timing is such that, if the board is amenable, I'd like to get it into the capital plan. So, because when I think about when my kids were growing up, in order to have an age appropriate playground for little ones, you had to go to the village. And because there is nothing, here in Springs, and, being the bedroom community of East Hampton, and we've got a lot of working families here, it would be great if there was a playground, small playground, where, toddlers and preschool kids could play. And then lastly, there was the fourth unanimous resolution was to inform the town of their objection to the recent village proposal to impose a parking fee on East Hampton residents not living within the confines of the village, as this fee puts an undue burden on Springs residents who have loyally supported village businesses. It is quite possible that the Springs community will choose to do their shopping elsewhere in response to this discriminatory fee. And this, there was a lot of discussion about the village's proposal at the Spring CAC. And then the last, I'm sorry, Peter?
I was just going to add that I've had a lot of correspondence from residents of the town in opposition to the proposed parking regulations in the village. And people are not not at all happy with that and say that they'll boycott and go elsewhere. So I think we're going to be continuing to forward those comments to the village, so the village trustees and mayor are aware that this is not a popular proposal.
And then lastly, Deborah Winters, the school superintendent, district superintendent, and Michael Henry, the business administrator, gave an update on the construction project at the spring school and other capital improvements. And then switch gears, special events. We got an announcement, or the governor, had an update on Friday where he announced that marriage receptions will be able to resume in accordance with state guidance on March 15th. Events must be approved by the local health department. There will be a 50% capacity limit on no more than 100, and no more than 150 people can attend the event. All patrons must be tested prior to the event. This is, obviously we're going to need more information because we do have some special event applications in for weddings that we have not circulated yet to the committee. And some of them were actually above the 150. So, because this only came out on Friday. But I think what's going to be interesting to see is how this plays out with events must be approved by the local health department. I can't imagine placing a bigger burden on the Suffolk County Health Department. We already know that there's 600 county workers that are doing contact tracing. We're trying to get the vaccine distributed, people tested, contact traced. And then how would it work where, all patrons must be tested prior to the event? It's a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, and this has happened repeatedly since the beginning of the pandemic, but I suspect the end result will be that the county will promulgate rules and regulations as to the events. The county health department will put out sort of a blanket set of things that have to be met. But we'll see. I don't know. These advisements are clarified and refined and changed almost on a daily basis. So I would stay tuned on that one.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring it up on the next call with the state to try and get that out there, that we have concerns about how that's going to work.
Yeah, because the part where, all the folks in attendance need to have, be a COVID test, right? They need to be tested. We were just, Gabriella, myself, and David McMaster were brainstorming on Friday thinking, so then how would the town issue a permit for an event? We couldn't issue it prior to getting the results of the COVID tests. Why would we give a permit and then, then are we going to be collecting the COVID tests of 150 guests to make sure everybody tested negative? It's just,
So Kathy, did it say the venue had to be at 50% capacity?
Yes.
150 people?
Yep. 50% capacity up to 150 people.
Up to 100. So if a venue could take 150 people, they could only be at 75.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to think if we had a venue that could have 300 folks.
Gurney's. We had this discussion actually.
And that's who's put the permits in. They've put the permits in for the events that they wish to have. They normally put up a tent for the season. They go through the building department. But, I just can't imagine issuing a permit without knowing the results of all of the attendees' COVID tests. You can't, I don't know if I could do it on, blind faith that, okay, everybody tested positive and here's your permit. I don't know.
Negative.
Yeah.
Negative. Yeah. Well, that would work too if you all test positive, I guess.
Yeah, nobody will get sick because everybody will.
Yeah. And so, so it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Yeah.
And then lastly, police reform and reinvention survey, that part of the state mandated, police reform reinvention process. The committee put together a survey. It was distributed. I hope all of you will send it out to all of your committees and friends and family and neighbors. Take you 5 minutes. It's anonymous. And because we're just trying to, get the opinions of folks in the community on, the police department's role and relationship with their community, how we can improve transparency and accountability, and any other related topic that people want to bring up. The survey can be taken in English or Spanish. And you can find the links on the town social media, the police department's Facebook page, our website, and we've set a cutoff date, so the survey must be completed by Sunday, February 14th. Parallel to this, though, the committee will start to draft recommendations that we will be sending to the state, because a lot of things have come out in our meetings, in our committee meetings. So, and that's what I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. David?
Yes, thank you. I had the Montauk CAC meeting last night. It was my first official meeting that I was there. Thank you very much. It was a great attendance, and I appreciate the Secretary Marcy. I had a lot of issues in Springs with arcing power, so she actually helped letting people into the meeting just in case I lost it, because she had a pretty static line, which was good. Anyway, the Montauk CAC, we went through a lot of the discussions, including a little bit, Kathy, some of the guidance that was being discussed about weddings, because a lot of weddings will happen in the Montauk area. It came down to the testing, perked up ears. I mentioned that the town is going to be installing a COVID testing site out there, that those sites and those companies might be able to assist them. I think Peter will have some more information on that shortly. We did discuss that about the Electrify America car charging stations. Those lights have been turned off because the looms were too large, and to a great round of applause out there from everyone in Montauk about that. They are happy to hear that. We also did discuss the skate park, a couple of the capital budget items that might be coming up, including the Westlake Comfort Station and the need for, and there's great support there. I let them know that a project, I know, Sylvia, you started a couple of years back, and Kathy, I think Kathy, you were there. I don't know if Peter and Jeff were there when Steve Ballone actually granted the town the $400,000 for the connection of the sidewalk, which is also part of the connection from the railroad station to downtown Montauk. Steve Lynch has been discussing that with me, and that project's not dead at all, any which way. We're slowly moving forward. Slow progress is better than no progress on that. So they're all very happy about that. Want to make sure it's a multi-user path. We'll continue to keep moving that forward as we go. The questions did come up as we were discussing their beach advisory committee about long-term parking needs, either south of the highway. I know I've been talking with Chief Sarlo about this, as far as we learned a lot this year as far as public safety of parking in Montauk and other locations, and also girls. Pizza's ready.
Oh, turning.
Okay. We learned a lot south of the highway about public safety. We added a couple crosswalks. So portions of this right now is a long-term look at parking in downtown Montauk, but also a lot of questions were arising about the sale of non-resident permits to co-ops, hotels. I informed them that the executive order is still in place right now, and the town board is going to until that executive order changes, the town board is not going to be issuing the non-resident beach parking permits right now. I know that we requested some information from the county on that, and they are understanding of that and the reasons for our justification of our decisions on there. Let's see here. They also were just discussed. They have an airport subcommittee. They know that October 2021 is upcoming, so they have a subcommittee that is just tracking everything that would happen at the East Hampton Airport, because they understand that whatever happens at the East Hampton Airport, as far as grant assurances or any potential decisions, could affect the Montauk Airport. So their ears are wide open on that one. Also in Montauk, John Rooney and I got a request from the Montauk school. Now that high-risk sports are allowed for a certain small season, the Montauk school is requesting the use of the Montauk Playhouse for, I believe it is volleyball for 5 weeks. They've sent in written protocols and written information to us. I pass that up to Dr. Polsky for his review, and they say they're all in accordance. John Rooney is going to be drafting an email to the town board about the use and the request of that of the Playhouse. Just please be looking out for it, because I know that they're interested in using it possibly as of early as next week then too. That'll be upcoming. I want to let everyone know that I have a resolution on for this week, and it is for land management to work on a project at the Tar Works, which is also out of Montauk and Hither Hills. It is trying to restore a grassland area out there. I know we discussed in the past, and it's pretty much removing some non-native vegetation and restoring grassy area in that area off of the coastal trail. It's a really neat little spot in that location. Also moving to land management on there, I know I discussed a Eagle Scout project from a gentleman named James Farrell that wants to do a kiosk. He would like to present in one of the next 2 weeks, potentially, if there is some time of the essence. I'm trying to nail that down. I'll coordinate with your office, Peter, about scheduling, because he will be in school. So it's just about scheduling that, make sure it works with his school schedule and the town board schedule also. So that's still moving forward. I'll get more information. Let's see here. Also in Montauk, there was some not vandalism, graffiti on a pavilion that's in the middle of Fort Pond. It's at Kirk Park. I've done some research on it. It's been shut off to the public because of safety, but they're gonna repaint over the graffiti. But there's some long history to Kirk Park that I just recently found out. I've had discussions with Chip Duryea out there, and some of the memorials at the top of it has, Sergeant John Behan. Mr. Behan's name is right on the top there. Names Dr. Peralt, Dr. Norman Kirk that are on there, the Weeds. It goes all further down to Frank Tooman, others, and in association with the MVA. So I'm going to continue looking into that. That area might need some love. I just need, care.
I like the way you said it the first time, actually.
Yeah. So we're going to look into that. Find out who owns the land and some other options there. Just want to let the community and the town board know that. And let's see, I think lastly, Laura Weir and I sat in last Wednesday on a webinar that was presented by the New York Preservation League in coordination with Kathy Curran and the Robert David Lang Garner Foundation. This is about restoration or grant funding for aspects of colonial cemeteries. And we found a lot of information there from them. It was a great conversation with Kathy. And Laura and I were presenting for a potential intake for a grant that would be to potentially designate our colonial cemeteries as a multi-listing National Historical Register. They recently did that in Southampton. And what that does, it opens up a lot for grant funding, but this grant will allow us to potentially hire, get a proposal and hire an expert or historian to actually write this application up. And I'll have more information in the future. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sylvia?
I'm sure the Energy Sustainability Committee met, and Lauren Steinberg from the Department of Natural Resources gave a report on the town's climate smart community status. I think I've reported this before. The town's bronze certification was awarded in 2016, and it will expire in August of 2021. So Lauren is putting together the town's recertification application, which will include all of the new completed actions, such as LED lighting upgrades, building energy benchmarking, EV charging stations, the fleet efficiency policy that we just approved, power purchase agreements for renewable energy, and our Solarize campaign. The town will probably recertify as a bronze, but it is closer to getting to the silver. So we just need to keep working on other projects in order to get to silver, which would be, I think, something we should really try to move forward with. Lauren also mentioned that she and Paul Muniz, the co-chair, are working on putting together a webinar on solar using the town Solarize campaign. Hopefully it'll take place, well, we're hoping to have it take place in February. We think it will now be March, working with Green Logic and the principal there, Andy Smith. Other potential topics for future webinars include just electric vehicles and clean heating and cooling. And let's see, we also had an update from Gordian Rock of Renewable Energy Long Island, and he gave the update on the status of CCA on Long Island. As you know, we had enabling legislation on November 2020 that was passed, and Southampton also adopted CCA enabling legislation on 2019. Southampton has not been able to offer any of their competitive, they've already hired Jewel Asset as their administrator. They have not been able to offer a competitive power supply through what is known as an ESCO because of aspects of LIPA Long Island choice tariff that presents a hurdle to CCA on Long Island. So the minutes to the Energy Sustainability Committee are very detailed with what Gordian sent to us. So if you are interested in some of the details of this, please go to our online Energy Sustainability and look for the minutes for the month of January. And also Energy Sustainability, we worked on one of the members, Biddle Duke, worked with another member, Francesca Rianon, and talking about climate emergency declaration. And the town, the committee, whole committee has looked at it, voted on it, changed it, worked on it. And I think we have a final product that we would like to present to the town board on the February 9th work session. And it would be, again, something we would like the town board to consider adopting, a climate emergency declaration. So hopefully, Peter, we can get that on for February 9th. The Arts Council also met, and we joining us in our Zoom call was Christine Goodman, who is the Director of Cultural Affairs for Jersey City. And the reason we had her on was she was instrumental in helping Jersey City establish a cultural affairs department. And so we were interested in how she funded it or how it got funded and if it is something that our town can also look at in getting something funded for cultural affairs. So it was actually really, really good. You would think, Jersey City's not East Hampton. It's a much bigger place. They have some of the same concerns, though, with making sure that art benefits the residents of the community and that arts matter in a community. And so it was good to hear her perspective, and she's available anytime for us to talk to her. They'd also like to continue doing an Art Apart program. If you recall, they did one last June. And we don't think COVID is going to be solved by this next June. So they would like to start working on an Art Apart program that similar to what happened last year. And they, I don't know if you recall, but I will remind you, they used to do creative networking nights. They did them, once a month. So now they're going to do a creative networking night on March the 4th. And they have a full slate of artists that will be presenting their work as well as how how they work. So I will distribute electronically a poster when it's available, so we can put it up on our website and put it on all of our social media. The business recovery meeting met on Wednesday. There is a YouTube video that we may want to send around that Dr. Fred Weinbaum did for Southampton Hospital. And it's a question answer it's somebody third party asking questions, or questions that have come up about the vaccine, how it works, why you should take it, the mechanisms for how it works in your body. Really good information that people have been asking, so it kind of takes some of the anxiety perhaps out of getting a vaccine. And he called it an open letter to the community answering questions about the vaccine. So if you're interested, I'd love to send it to town board members. And then if you would like to send it to your committee members, that might be helpful. Peter, we may want to put this up on the Facebook page as well.
Yeah, I think we definitely should go out across our platforms.
Okay. So just as of Wednesday of last week, Southampton Hospital had 23 COVID patients. 3 of those were in ICU. The highest number of COVID patients that Southampton Hospital has had was on January the 16th, when they had 39 patients. Stony Brook Hospital has 181 COVID patients. 39 of those are in ICU, and 27 of the 39 are on ventilators. I find that frightening. And Long Island Greenport Hospital has 3 COVID patients. The business committee discussed with Peter, the testing sites and getting ready for hopefully a vaccine distribution within the town of East Hampton. And the business committee was very, very supportive of that, and would be very willing to help in any volunteer way that they could. Any expertise that some of these businesses might have in their own employees that might help out the town of East Hampton, they've also been very supportive of being able to help us out. So I want to thank the Business Recovery Committee for their dedication, not only to their own businesses, but helping the whole community survive as a whole. So I want to thank them. The last thing was Tom Rule sent a memo out about some transfer of development rights for a piece of property within the village. So if the town would just look at that, I can read the memo.
I'm supportive of that. That makes great sense for affordable housing in the village. It's a village property for their personally.
So the question is, are there TDRs, transferred development rights, for wastewater on parcels that the town owns within the village that we've purchased and sterilized, and we only contribute TDRs, transferred development rights, for affordable housing projects. So there are several properties that we've purchased in the past in the village that would qualify. So I think just trying to go through that list of properties and find the most appropriate ones to utilize for that purpose. Yeah, that's a good project right there.
Yeah, so Tom's request was the property that they were going to use for the TDR, for this affordable apartment, is on a piece of property that has a life estate on it. And so the Suffolk County Department of Health Services will not accept that as a TDR. We would have to decide whether or not we would like that still to happen. So Peter, what I'm hearing is you might want to transfer that to another piece of property, a TDR.
Yeah, I think we should look at what properties we have are eligible that the county would accept, and just as a board decide, which one it is and move forward on it.
Okay, so we just need to consent to a swap of properties for that TDR. So Kathy, are you supportive of us looking for that as well?
Yes.
Okay. Jeff?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we'll move forward with that.
So we should work with Sylvia. I'm happy to work with you on that, and John and Scott, to identify eligible parcels. I don't know what the flow calculations are on the specific project, but if it's just an affordable apartment, I don't think they're very demanding. I think it's less than 300 gallons per day. So I think we have a number of properties eligible. So we just need to find the best suited one, I think, and then the board can authorize it.
I guess where I was confused when I got the memo was that a property had been picked, but I don't think we ever discussed it as a board, what property should be picked, and that they picked the one with the life. I mean, that's where my confusion was, is that we never had that discussion and it was done.
Yeah.
I think that it may have been in the original resolution accepting the property, that property would be contribute to as a TDR. And
but it could only do so after the life estate has been realized. So
I've got that resolution pulled up, 2017-699, and I don't see that
in any
as
case,
a resolved.
It would require the board selecting and authorizing a property to be used in that way with Suffolk County Health Department. So we can follow up on that, Sylvia.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
It sounds like the board's unanimously in support of doing that. So
that's all I have.
And bring it back for authorization.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvia. Jeff, you have a liaison report for us today?
Yeah, I met with the Housing Authority. They've elected a new chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Kevin Warren. You may know Kevin, very bright guy, very energetic. And I think he's going to do a good job of continuing their work. It was sort of an not sort of, it was their organizational meeting. So there's, some discussion. I don't think that's terribly interesting to the town board. They're moving forward on a roof on the Seymour Schutz building. They've got a note payment coming up on Springs Fireplace. They're working on roof repairs, and they've started to look at the Accabonac playground and improve the safety surface, which has been worn. And so they're bringing in about 200 yards of material to make that safer and to upgrade it, and checking into the laundry concession for those units. We had some discussion about Georgia Green and Gansett Meadow. There was just some concern that the public not be confused by the fact that there are a couple of vacant apartments in Gansett Meadow, and not to think that means that they're openings that on the list that could get you into those apartments, because as they explained, when they go through the list and then they circle back through the list. So sometimes people think they qualify, then they don't qualify. So at the moment, there are a couple of apartments there, but the list is the list, and they're still using the list, and they wanted to make that clear to us all. Apparently, there's 6 apartments that have not yet been filled in Gansett Meadow. There's more. They're proceeding working on the 3 Mile Harbor project. They're happy that we gave them a supportive letter indicating that we've worked with them before on the pilot agreements, and that seems to be in place. On the airport issue, there's continuing work, some of which we're going to be discussing in exec session today. I circulated to the town board an economic report that was put out by some pro-airport folks. I'm guessing we haven't had a lot of time to review that, but we'll probably be discussing that either with council or our consultants. LTV had an organizational meeting. They've added a new member, JP Foster, from the school board. Again, much discussion about the impact of COVID and actually the impact of dealing with town hall, which they've done so well. But the town meetings have definitely impacted their salary levels, because they had to bring in more people more often to cover and figure out how to cover the town board meetings. I guess like the town itself, they've seen their cleaning costs double because they have to do more intensive cleaning because of COVID. And they've made pretty good headway on a lot of deferred repairs over the years, which of course has affected their budget to some extent, including HVAC repairs and new servers, and a few other items of video equipment. They are, I believe, looking for another PPP agreement, which should help them a little bit. They're still looking into some equipment that would, when and if we get out of the COVID situation, would enable, could be set up in remote locations, for example, Montauk, so that we could have those hybrid meetings, which we've talked about, partially live, partially remote. They're still working on the archive. They're not spending any money on the archive, and Jeannie Henderson is graciously volunteering her time to help continue to sort out and segregate out some public access archives, which are probably, they're hoping they may give them actually to the East Hampton Library. So that's a plan that they're working on. And they're trying to work in conjunction with a planned Springs Film Festival. I don't know if, Kathy, you know anything about that, but that's still sort of in the developmental stage. I attended a meeting of the Village Preservation Society. They wanted to get an update on the airport process, what our plans was, and I met with them on January 23rd to give them an update. I have been speaking to Tom Rule at some length and Len Bernard at some length on the Camp Hero situation, and Kim Shaw has been involved a little bit in the discussions. And I'd like to put it on a work session to talk about the possibility of getting an RFP for some engineering on what could be done if that system was replaced. I've talked to Tom, and as you know, previously with Severo, about the history of the system and its problems, and Len Bernard, confirmed. I think the last time we spoke, Peter, you were interested in knowing whether a list of expenses and payments that went into their dramatically increased tax assessment was accurate. And Len fairly promptly responded that it was, looked it over and said, yeah, the figures are accurate. And I think, and Tom brought up the obvious fact that the system, while it's a community system, is really just like an ordinary septic system. It's just got cesspool rings, and it's more complicated because they've got pumping and we've got problems with the grinders, but it's basically not a great system, and it dates from the 1980s. And he suggested, and I think it's a good suggestion, that we consider what it would cost to completely replace the system with a modern, more update IA system. And of course, the issue to do that involves some engineering, and I think it's probably time to move forward with a new engineering report to see really what we're looking at. Trying to track down, where they went wrong on the equipment over the years historically is a little bit like jumping down a rabbit hole. And we're well beyond most of the time that there'd be any legal remedy if we found out something was wrong with it. I think it's really time to figure out what kind of a fix would solve this problem. It's 20 households. It's near, I think it's Oyster Pond, whose water quality has been impacted. It drains into a state park, so it's a significant source of pollution coming out of 20 homes. Tom had been in touch with Kim Shaw, and I think we can bring this, I want to bring this back to a work session I didn't feel ready to do it this week, to discuss what kind of input we could get from an RFP from an engineering firm about really putting in a system that's going to solve the problem and bring them up to date. And that's what I would suggest doing. I also discussed with Len Bernard the possibility of using CPF funds. And as you know, our last 2 months of CPF payments have been pretty extraordinary. We've pulled in a lot of money from CPF. I believe it's been in excess of $6 million for the last 2 months. And I just think that it's worth a discussion about once and for all going in and fixing the problem in a way that brings those systems up to date. You're talking about 20 homes here. That's a lot of effluent. And especially, and I asked Len about the use of CPF funds, and he supported it. I mean, I don't want to speak for Len until he comes into a town work session to talk it over, but I think we should talk it over, because I don't think we're going to fix this in pieces. This is not going to be susceptible to being solved in a piecemeal way. And their taxing district is not really a workable mechanism if we step back and take a more complete look at solving the problem. So that's kind of my take on it. I'd like to get all the players in, could get them in, at the next available work session. It's easy to bring in Tom and Kim and Len Bernard, but I would start looking ahead and trying to figure out a larger scale fix. I think it fits in with our town-wide desire to improve water quality. And particularly when we look at the price of lots that we routinely buy to protect water quality, the price of a septic system that's going to, solve the effluent coming out of 20 houses is probably well within our means to achieve. So that's where I'd like to go. I'm not really asking for comment today because it's the first time I've, made the recommendation, but I think we should bring them in and have a serious talk. I think it's time we fix that problem for those 20 homeowners. It's not the best of worlds and it's not the worst of worlds, but it's time to get our arms around it and get it done, I think. So that's the direction I'm taking. I'm open to any suggestions town board members want to do.
So Jeff, before you move on to any other topic, we had received from the Homeowners Association there at Camp Harry a request for clarification on a number of points, and you were kind enough to look into that and take that on. And we were hoping to have a summary of what you found presented back to the Homeowners Association. That's been some time, and I know I just forwarded you an email this morning that I received from Lisa DeViglio, who lives in the association there. I think there have been concerns that were raised in that letter that needed to be addressed, and the purpose was to go point by point and address those specific concerns, some of which you characterized as just finding out whether or not the actual money charged was supported by bills paid and what work was actually done. And as you said, that seems to be, everything seems to be in order there. But
I just said on the money charge.
I'm sorry, if I could just finish that. There are other issues that were raised. This is a somewhat unique situation in that this was originally a affordable housing project that had a system that was taken over and some improvements had been made to over time, but it's its own taxing district. So it's one of the very few, if not the only, wastewater district currently in creation in the town. The Scab Waste District, I believe, is in the process of being wrapped up with the closure of the Scab Waste plant. But it requires that those residents share the costs of any improvements there. And, when the system fails and it has to be pumped out, they're responsible for the pumping costs. When the pumps break, they're responsible for repairing those. And the burden is, growing in cost. It can only be paid for by those within the district. Now, with regard to CPF funding, we have a process, which is the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee reviews potential projects and makes recommendation as to whether or not the town board should authorize funding. So that's been in place since the 20% of CPF water quality funds could be taken out of the general CPF fund. But that's the process for that. The biggest concern that I'm hearing from those residents is that the rising costs on their tax bill are getting to be quite a burden. And a package plant, which would be required for 23 residences, would be quite expensive. I don't know how that's going to alleviate their current burden and questions, but certainly something that I think is in alignment, as you said, with our overall goals to improve waste treatment within the town. So it's something we can look at, but I think what they're looking for is that more immediate response and summary to their letter. So,
well, I think the board should consider it as a whole, frankly. I think we should bring it in on a work session. We can bring it in on the next one and talk about it as a whole. I mean, we've paid in money to help them because they have this district.
We've actually not paid any money at all. That money is paid by them.
It's clearly not working. The current system and the current financial system is not working. So,
well, the engineering actually is supposed to solve that problem. As you probably know, the pumps were clogging, and there's an additional expense for confined space when they're worked on, which creates a situation that's high hazard. And with this rail system that we did recently bond for, once that's installed, those pumps can be maintained without great expense. Long-term goal might be to try and find if there's a system that could be put in place that is more effective at treating waste, that can be afforded, by these homeowners. I mean, they would have to vote on it in support of it. Happy to have that discussion with them and with the board and see if there's a way forward to do that in a way that they support. But again, the short term was to respond to their inquiries. So look forward to, that being done.
I'm not sure that there's, that either I or Severo or Tom Rule are going to be able to track down, where this went wrong and why it went wrong. This is a process over.
Oh, we don't even know if it went wrong, though, Jeff.
Well, yes, we do.
We don't actually think.
Clearly, we do know it's not going right because it's not working. And, the big issue has been the installation of grinder pumps and were the correct pumps put in. And it's years ago, and Severo did a very good job of, tracking down, step by step what was done on the system. But in terms of trying to assess, the failure and who's to blame, or if there's any liability at this point, it's a little bit, frankly, to put it bluntly, it's a little bit of, good money after bad. It's time, I think, to re-envision a solution here. So I'm happy to go through the Water Quality Task Force Advisory Committee. I think we should involve that, and I'll make a note to do that. I think Kim should come in. I think Len should come in. But this system, it's not, no matter what we do, this system has been, sort of partially and semi-repaired over many years, and it's not going to get any better. It's time to rethink the entire process. So I'm happy to follow whatever procedures there are in regard to the taxing district. I understand that it's imposing these high bills on them. And I think it's time we look at the resources we have with CPF funding to help these people out. Let's have a more detailed discussion on a little bit more notice at the next work session. Happy to do that.
Okay, we can certainly do that. So you won't be responding with a summary of their answering their questions, right?
I'm not sure that assignment. I'll communicate. Peter, yeah, I know what you're doing here. Let's just stay calm here. I'm happy to respond to the residents.
The work done, Jeff, and if I need to assign it to someone else, I will. I just, we talked about this a month ago.
Yeah, and I've been working on it, Peter. You do like to make suggestions that I'm not engaged in work, don't you, Peter?
I didn't say that, Jeff. I simply said it's been a month since at least since the letter came in, and you agreed to answer it. And I just got a follow-up email from Lisa DeViglio, so I'm just asking for a status update.
I will follow up.
Now you're saying that you're not going to send a letter, that you want to put it on a work session to devise a whole entirely new approach to their wastewater treatment. And I don't think any of them have even become aware of your plan to do so.
Well, Peter, do you have a plan that would,
let me ask you this. District, be interesting to hear from the people in tax district if they even support that approach, prior to putting it on for a work session.
I will communicate with them. I've been doing the work that I needed in order to communicate with them.
Okay.
And so I don't hear that the supervisor has a plan to, if they can't afford these high increases, and they are significant increases. I haven't heard you make an offer to help out with town funds from the general fund. Is that on the table?
It's not legal to do that, Jeff. It's a separate tax district. Yeah. You cannot use town funds, general funds, for that purpose.
Well, therefore, I don't have a solution for them. There's no money I can pull out of the air that will solve that problem immediately. And therefore, I looked at a larger solution to the problem, which is that we redo this system for them. And I'm happy to propose that. I wanted to propose it to the board first so that I didn't, just go off on my own, but that's what I'm going to propose. And I took the time to talk to Len Bernard about it first, because he's our chief financial officer. And, it met with, I'm
actually the budget director.
The budget director. And he thought it was a good idea to discuss. Yeah. So I think
Jeff, I appreciate that. We'll talk about putting that on a future work session. And if you're going to get back to the homeowners association, that's great. And
I'll give him an indication that that's where, that's a direction I'm interested in, and see how they react. But I think it's perfectly appropriate to talk to some folks behind the scene, run it by the town board first before I respond to them. That's where I'm going. I don't, we're not going to be able to make the silk purse out of a sow's ear. The system is we've been tinkering with it, and trying to do partial fixes with it over many, many years, and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So I think we should have a larger discussion at a work session.
Thank you. We'll put that on in an upcoming work session.
That sounds good. I wanted to mention that I wanted to say that, I've been sitting in on the police reform committee, and I just wanted to compliment them on running some ads or discussions, really, not ads, on the Spanish language radio station, which I think is a great idea. And other than that, we have some airport issues, but we're going to be discussing that in exec session. I wanted to remind the folks that not only is the town doing testing on its own site, but that George Dempsey, a local physician, is doing testing right next door in those buildings, and has a pretty good turnaround of 24 hours on the PCR testing, which is very good. And I just wanted to let folks know that. I also met with the East Hampton Sag Harbor CAC for the first time, and we made it through without power, and I have flashlights for the meeting, and I think it won't come as a surprise to you, Peter, that they have some traffic concerns which I guess frequently pop up. One of them is relates to some comments you made earlier about what the one-way street, and that we don't have many one-way streets. And there was some interest in looking at, apparently a stop sign had been taken. There was a stop sign at Floyd Street and Springs Fireplace, and there's some interest in getting it back, and some concern to improve the signage of that one-way street. And also, J.B. DeSantos asked if we could look into West Drive up near the bus barn, because apparently it's turning into kind of a truck cut through, and he'd like to see it stopped. So I'm going to follow up with the highway superintendent and see what his feelings are about that. And I guess we'll have to check in with the state about, I think the state about a stop sign at the corner of Floyd and maybe improving the signage. The comments reflected something you said earlier, Peter, that people aren't used to. We don't have that many one-way streets. So a lot of times people pull in and they don't realize, and they have to back out. I wanted to say that, consistent with what Kathy said, the committee is also going to provide a letter to the town board on the village parking regulations. We had a long discussion on the village parking regulations, and a lot of opposition to that, and some interesting comments as to the problems that it might create. Actually, Katie Casey mentioned, that she thought it might have a chilling effect on people using public transportation, because you can't readily park your car as you used to. So I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure whether that's the case, but they had the same general concerns about ordinary people, working people that use the village parking lots for short errands. I think we all do that, where you just pop in to get, a small item and leave. And if you suddenly are facing, these hourly parking charges for perhaps for some of the summer residents, probably less so for second homeowners, it may not be that big a burden, but for local folks, working folks, $2, $4, $6 extra when you get your groceries is probably something to think about. So there was not any support for them, and I think you're going to see a unanimous letter from them. And that's, I think, about what I have.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to give a quick update as to the most recent numbers for COVID-19 infection within Suffolk County. I have the numbers from Sunday. There were 839 tests given. The percent positive rate is down to 5.8%, and that was just about half what it was at the peak, third week in January, when it was up close to 12%. Suffolk County, Nassau County, Long Island still tends to lead the state in the total number of infections. There is quite a bit of infection out there, so you still please have to be very careful. The vaccines have been released. The supplies are quite limited, and that has been a problem not just in New York State, but throughout the country. Very limited number of vaccines. There have been, some problematic aspects to the vaccine rollout, including opening up the eligibility list to include now over 7 million people in New York, and with the expectations that they could sign up to get the vaccine. That has not worked out quite so well to date. It's been my thought and concern that East Hampton needs to have the ability to have vaccines here locally. It's I've heard from a number of elderly people, sometimes in their late 80s and into their 90s, saying that a trip to the Javits Center or Jones Beach is really just too much for them to undertake. There's concerns about the transportation, about being exposed to COVID getting there. I've heard from all all areas of our community. It's probably the most important thing that I think that the town can be working on at this point. And I made mention several times in the past that we're looking to open the CDCH building as a dedicated vaccination center. I've had direct conversations with County Executive Steve Bellone and the governor's regional representatives about making vaccine available to us once they get it, so that we can administer it here locally. We've continued to move forward on getting the physical site prepared. I want to thank David Lease, who's Buildings and Grounds Liaison, for working directly with staff to ensure that the building is ready to go. We've made necessary purchases of equipment to help facilitate this. I recently served on a panel discussion with the Express Sessions. The Express Press Group holds sessions on timely topics and have local people on to discuss. I served with County Executive Steve Bellone, Assemblyman Fred Thiel, and representatives from Northwell Health and Stony Brook in a discussion about the vaccine rollout. One size does not fit all. And even the federal government saying that they want to make pharmacies available as vaccine sites. We know from our own local pharmacies that they're ill-equipped size-wise, parking-wise. This is not a vaccine like any other that we've had, flu, polio, whatever. This is a multi-dose vaccine, has to be handled very carefully, certain protocols, freezing, thawing, administering. It requires that people who receive the vaccine be observed for nearly 20 minutes. They have to be socially distanced while that's happening. So we need a large area. The CDCH building lends itself very well to be a dedicated vaccine site. It's not used for any other purpose at this time. It wouldn't interfere with any other businesses, school activities. And so we're moving forward on that. We've been having meetings with Sheila Rogers from the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation and a number of local doctors and health professionals. We've been spoken to our fire commissioners and other EMS staff. We have been compiling a list of community volunteers, vaccinators, clerical workers, people to direct traffic, and so on, and compiling that list so that when we have the vaccine available, that we can put our work plan into effect. We've also sought to expand testing within the town, and I know that we identified a site in Montauk. The parking lot by the boat ramp lends itself well. There are facilities there, electric and whatnot, to hook up to the testing pod for Montauk. We did run into a legal snag in that it's part of the state right of way, and neither the state nor the town was aware until we asked for permission that our lease agreement with or license agreement with the state had expired. Reached out directly to Chip Gorman, the regional director of New York State Parks for Long Island, Region 1. He was extremely helpful and cooperative, and they, on their side, working with their legal department, found a workaround and have issued a permit for that site. So I expect that we will be ready to go within the next several days to open up a testing site in Montauk. I know this is something that's will be well received by the Montauk community, and we're happy to be able to provide that. This Friday, we're having a hearing, the supervisors holding a hearing on the Wainscott Incorporation petition under village law. I have to find whether or not the petition is legally sufficient. And for the purpose of that, we will be holding the hearing. It'll be televised via LTV, just as we do this town board meeting on Friday, February 5th. Beginning at 11 a.m. And the purpose of the hearing is to hear objections to the sufficiency of the petition. It's not really to hear about whether or not you support incorporation or any of the other surrounding issues. It's absolutely about hearing directly from the public as to whether or not they have found objections to whether or not the petition is legally filed and sufficient. So those objections, in order to be considered, must be submitted in writing, signed and notarized, and received before the close of the hearing, which after a 20-day adjournment could close. So we're certainly going to welcome anyone who wants to speak at that hearing. You can make whatever comments you like, but again, in order for them to be considered by the supervisor, they have to relate to the sufficiency of the petition itself. I want to have a.
Can I ask a question about that,
Sure.
Peter?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious that it's not on townclerk.com. Does Carol, is she there? Does she take a roll call? Does she keep minutes? I mean, it's not. And if she does, should we have that on town clerk because it's not there now?
It's not required to be there, but I think it would be helpful to get it on. I didn't realize it wasn't on. It is on the website. It has been put out across our platforms, and it has been posted and legally noticed within newspapers and the press. But again, wouldn't hurt to get it up on.
It's in mommy's bathroom.
John?
I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I apologize. I thought I was on mute.
You're not.
Quite all right, David. So any other questions on that? So I also want to bring up it was mentioned earlier about whether or not the town will be issuing non-resident beach permits and when. I think we should review the permit fees prior to making that decision. I know that a number of municipalities, including the Village of East Hampton, have revisited their fee schedule. I think we should do the same. And I do think we will be issuing non-resident permits at some point in the coming months. But let's have that discussion about permit fees first. I know there was also some recurring questions about other aspects of whether resident or non-resident, co-op or not, hotels, etc. So I think it's time to review that again. The town board recently put out an RFP, or a while back, actually late last year, for hiring a consulting and engineering firm to create a map and plan for community wastewater treatment for Montauk. The town board accepted the recommendation of H2M and authorized the hiring of them. I believe that we're nearly done. John, maybe you can bring me up to date. I think we're very close to finalizing the contract with H2M. But the wastewater committee will be resuming meetings in furtherance of that effort once the contract's finalized. We're now in the month of February. February is Black History Month. And I reached out to Dr. Georgette Greer-Key and asked her if she would be willing to come to a town board meeting and give a presentation on Black history and the contributions and histories of people of color in East Hampton and on the East End, which she has agreed to do on the 16th. And very happy about that. Also, I'm hoping to have David Rattray and Donna Marie Barnes, who's the curator archivist at Sylvester Manor, discuss the project that David started with his interns, I think back in 2017, called Plain Sight Project. And again, that is a investigation of the histories and contributions of people of color here in East Hampton. An undertold story about their contributions and involvement within our town. So we look forward to being able to have further understanding and discussion of those histories coming up. And that's what I have for today.
Can I just, I spoke incorrectly. Sylvia, you were right. The transfer of development rights was in the acquisition resolution back in 2017. And then I just have a question about the BOEM, early last month released the draft EIS for the South Fork Wind Project. And there's a 45-day public, comment period. And I guess, are we going to be getting a presentation by town staff, planning and natural resources on what the town's comments are going to be on that plan?
So Brian Frank has been reviewing the wind farm project.
And we, John Wagner and I spoke to Joanne Powell yesterday about this as well. So yeah, there's a response that's being prepared. They're reviewing the relevant parts of the environmental impact statement that BOEM has prepared, and they'll be prepping a response for the town, for the board to take a look at. Then once you're okay with it, it'll be submitted.
Right, because I believe that the period ends February 22nd.
That's right.
And the first public hearing that they're having for the general public, if they're interested, is on February 9th.
Right. Right. February 9th at 1, February 11th at 5, and February 16th at 5.
Thank you.
Virtual meetings. I don't know if we have that anywhere. Maybe we need to put that on the town website, as well as when the public can weigh in.
Certainly can look to do that. We also just will mention that with the storm yesterday, that we had, a fairly significant amount of snow, although, with the rain and the warmer temperatures, it turned to slush. The roadways were very difficult to traverse. And, I went out to the beach in Montauk on low tide and saw that, it was quite high. It was already lapping at the dunes. And last night's high tide, we did have some severe erosion in the downtown area. And, it's really been quite amount of erosion that's taken place. The bags are exposed, and there's very, very little space between where the ocean is and development there, the hotels, whatnot. As far as I understand, FIMP is still on track for the major stand replenishment, which could start the end of this year or early next year. But we still have quite a ways of winter to go, and unless the weather is quite mild from here forward, we're going to have some major expenses to get the beaches back together in time for summer.
That's sobering.
Yeah, it is. It is sobering, and it's not something we want to have to deal with. But that's kind of what we have right now. Our climate is becoming more unstable. The number of gale force winds that we've had, I think, in the last 12 or 14 months has been unusual. Not so much the total rainfall that we've had is different than normal, but the rate at which it comes down has caused flooding all over our town roadways. We're seeing the changes. Those who are paying attention are seeing the changes. And I think it just really emphasizes, to your point, Sylvia, earlier in your liaison report, talking about signing on and acknowledging where we are and that we're in a climate crisis is appropriate. People need to think about that. And we need to do everything we can, because to try and sustain these type of costs long-term just is not possible. And we need to be adapting to our climate, and we need to be trying to adapt the way we live so that we're a little friendlier to the planet we live on. So with that being said, I think we're up to resolutions.
All right.
Kathy,
So I do. Resolution 2021-199 is a special warrant, and the claims total $37,500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
I'd like to offer resolution 2021-200 is it to appoint Dan Farnham Jr. To chairman of the Fisheries Advisory Committee for calendar year 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Glad to hear that. Thanks, Dan, for being willing to serve.
And thank you, Brad Lowen, for 14 years as chair prior to
Wow.
that.
Nice. That's terrific.
And I think I have the next resolution, 2021-197. I need a motion to untable and adopt as amended.
Motion to untable and adopt as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. I do want to just read the result quickly. It's resolved that town board hereby consents to the extension of license agreement authorized by resolution 2020-377 to extend by prior resolutions, most recently by resolution 2020-1213 until May 1st, 2021, to permit Deepwater South Fork to complete testing activities outlined herein and in greater detail in their submission dated January 15th, 2021, subject to the following conditions. Deepwater South Fork shall apply for and obtain all necessary road opening permits from the superintendent of highways prior to commencement. Equipment, logistics, and scheduling shall be performed in accordance with the January 15th, 2021 submission. Attachment 1, work shall occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday only. No activity shall be permitted on weekends or holidays. Any and all equipment and materials required shall either be removed daily or secured to protect public health and safety. The licensee shall submit proof of insurance as required in the license agreement prior to commencement of all work. And resolution 201 is to adopt records retention and deposition schedule, New York local.
I didn't get a vote on it.
Didn't vote.
We didn't get a vote on that.
I'm sorry.
We
All in
should
favor?
roll call it. Now we have a roll call.
Roll call, please, Carol.
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez,
Aye.
Councilman Lees.
Aye.
I was looking at the wrong name. Councilwoman Overby,
Aye.
Councilman Bragman,
Nay.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 201 is to adopt records retention and deposition schedule in New York local government records, accordance with Article.
Disposition. It's a
Sorry?
disposition, not a deposition.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Usually you have the records you retain and those that you dispose.
Second, do you want me? Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
second. I'll entertain a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Passed and carried. And resolution 202 is budget modification. Town board directs budget office to make the following budget modification. It's moving $7,500 from full-time salaries to outside professional in the same amount.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. We have executive session items, John.
I make a motion to move to enter into executive session to discuss our litigation strategy in the case of the town of East Hampton versus Ocean View Terrace Hotel LLC, and further to seek advice from counsel in matters unrelated to that litigation.
Second.
Any other issues to discuss? Exec?
Well,
We
I have
have advice of counsel.
yeah, advice of counsel. The issue is the airport.
Anyone else? Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Do we have time that we're going to go into exec session? I know it's already after 2.
Already 2:00, and I
Right,
think the council's on the call for 2.
Right, I'd ask if we could just go right into it. Peter, I need you to send out the invitation to the folks involved.
Very good. So
Okay.
we'll go into executive session. I'll send the link shortly. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, be well. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.